Good evening, everyone. Are we recording, Brian?
Yep.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Board of Trustees of the Town of Buena Vista, Colorado. It's August 13th, 2024, and the time is 7:01 p.m. If you have cell phones with you, please silence them. And I'll call this meeting to order and ask Paula to call the roll, please.
Mayor Fay,
Here?
Trustee Hike. Here. Trustee Lucrezi.
Here.
Trustee Rice.
Here.
Trustee Rosenauer. Here. Trustee Rowe.
Here.
Trustee Swisher.
Here.
Thank you. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Trustees, you have before you an agenda for tonight's meeting. I know of one change that we'd like to make in the agenda, so that people from the Chafee Housing Authority can be moved to the top of the agenda rather than towards the end of it. Are there any other changes that anyone would like in the agenda?
Madam Mayor, just one point of clarification on business item B, public hearing, tri-view annexation rezoning. It's just a zoning. As opposed to rezoning.
Rezoning, it's a zoning. Okay, so that's item B. Okay, with those two changes to move the item E, we'll move up ahead of item A.
Move we accept the agenda as modified.
We have Bryce and Mike. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, the motion passes. The agenda is adopted. And then we have what we call the consent agenda, which has minutes of our meeting last time, as well as different advisory boards and commissions. The police chief report, planning director report, and public works director report. Are there any items in there that anyone would like to have open for discussion?
On the water department report, I believe it has unaccounted water as 19%, but it almost looks closer to 40% when you're looking at the master meter compared to the billed consumption. And I was just questioning that if we're making any headway with the Ivy League water loss.
Brian, do you know anything on that?
I have not heard. We do have Sean on the here. Of any progress necessarily as far as identified leaks or anything like that, outside of being more proactive on looking. Sean can be muted at this moment.
Sean, are you there?
Yeah, I am there. I'm here.
Yeah. Thank you.
Good evening. Yeah, I
And you may not.
Significant loss still.
yeah, I don't have my staff report in front of me right now. I can take a look at it, but to the question with the Ivy League, I haven't had any updates as far as how they're doing with their system. But yeah, I'll double check on that just to see if I made a error in math, but yeah,
I think I'd made an error in math, and I think that your percent is correct. But I do want to keep this in the forefront so it doesn't get lost.
Yep, us as well. Yeah, we had a staff brief discussion regarding Ivy League and trying to keep that momentum or keep that juiced up, and going forward with Mark and Joe and myself.
Thank you, Sean.
And if you'd like to have it as
You
a
bet.
business item, on a future meeting, you could let me know.
Okay, thank you.
Any other items? Okay, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as written?
So moved.
Got Gina,
Second.
Lucrezi, and Rice. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, the motion passes. Consent agenda is accepted as it is. So now we get to the part of our meeting where we have public comment. So anyone who has signed in on the clipboard is free to speak at public comment. You'll also notice in looking at the agenda that a lot of what we're doing tonight are public hearings that deal with particular issues. So if you speak at public comment in general, your comments will not be part of the public hearings. But if you'd like to be in the public hearings, you want to just let me know. So we'll start with Michael Hannigan.
Good evening, how are you folks?
Your name and
Michael
address.
Hannigan, my address to 115 River Run Court here in BD. And I bring you what I hope is good news. So about a year and a half ago, two very talented young women in our community, Tish Pryor and Nicole Steffen, some of you may know them, started brainstorming the idea of creating a makerspace here in BV. And they asked me to try to help them stand this thing up as a nonprofit entity. And believe it or not, 2 weeks ago, we signed a lease building. And for folks who don't know what a makerspace is, basically it's a membership-driven community space that creates a place for entrepreneurs, craftspeople, woodworkers, welders, and metalworkers to come together and create things for themselves and for the community. So we leased the building at 222 South Highway 24. It's the yellow building across the street from K's. And it's going to take some work to pull it together, but we should be up and running in a month or so. And as I said, a makerspace, really, what we have so far is the ability to create a woodworking shop, a metalworking and welding shop. And over time, we'll have spaces for example, industrial sewing, probably a 3D printer, places where people we'll have a paint spray booth. So it's basically a member can come there if they don't have their own complete shop at home. They can come and join the makerspace. We're calling it BV Made, M-A-D-E. And we're excited about it. It's going to be a really cool project. There are makerspaces all over the country. Many of them are really dynamic additions to a community. And we're hoping that this one becomes as dynamic. But that building needs a lot of work. So we need help. If you want to volunteer with us or come and give us advice, expertise, let us know. BV Made, 222 South Highway 24, and big things in the future, we hope. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Michael. Okay, Honey.
Yeah, thanks.
So you'd like to speak with us just in general, right? Not as part of the public.
Not as part of a hearing.
Great.
Um,
Here, please
yeah.
give your name and address
Got it.
for the record.
Whitney Eckstein, 119 Meadow Lane. I've got an ask for you, preceded by 3.5 minutes of lead up. I'll try to make it as fast as possible. So we began requesting that the town consider relaxing the municipal code for highway commercial workforce camping back in September 21st, 2022, just shy of 2 years ago. Technically, though, our very first outreach to town was over 3 years ago, during the Tri-View master planning process. Who's counting? And now I fully understand that things move slowly when there are staffing issues, and it certainly seems that our town has had staffing issues. I too am very familiar with massive staffing issues due to a lack of workforce housing, and I've chosen to get creative in a solution to secure qualified employees. Now, we went this route of applying for a rezone this past spring because I was told by town staff that highway commercial workforce camping was pretty much dead in the water, and that this rezone effort could be the fastest or possibly the easiest solution. Well, it's definitely not been fast or easy. This process has been extremely unpredictable and rather oddly conducted throughout. I'm just gonna give you a few highlights of things that transpired. We paid $1,000 for the rezone fee and had our preliminary meeting that went well with the planning department. We presented to P and Z commissioners during our hearing and it was voted in favor of. And then that hearing was thrown out via administrative discretion due to an error in public noticing. At the later do-over hearing, an alternate solution in place of our rezone request was discussed at some length. As was discussed, matters from the initial hearing, which was thrown away, which my attorney advised should never be done during a hearing. At this do-over hearing, our planning department, to some extent, recommended against the rezone, which I certainly would have appreciated the heads up on prior to paying $1,000 for that effort. And ultimately, this iteration of the P and Z board that was in attendance that voted, they decided not to vote in favor of this. Craziness. Look, I'm down to tackle this workforce housing matter in whatever way it might come to be. After over 2 years of pushing for it, I just want to see it happen. And I'm simply trying to find a place to house our employees during an insane housing crisis when no other viable options exist. I truly thought that by this time, workforce camping on my own property would be codified and we'd be on the path to full code compliance. And to that point, in the hours leading up to this meeting, I received a plea deal from our town prosecutor for my code-defined implementation of one RV that houses our kitchen manager on our property behind our barrel warehouse. In summary, I'm facing $1,500 of fine at minimum and potentially upwards of $2,650 if I don't end our one employee's workforce RV housing solution within 21 days. A solution I honestly felt forced to engage in for the continued operation of our tasting room. We do not charge rent to our employee that is unobtrusively living in a small RV behind our warehouse. It is simply a solution to retain a valuable Deer Hammer employee. Now, I fully realize that my solution is not compliance with the code, but I'll just say this one last time. We are in a workforce housing crisis, and this crisis is furthered by an economic downturn that has hospitality-based businesses in our valley experiencing a 20 to 30% drop in year-over-year earnings. Ask around, this is a big issue that people are going to start talking about. This evening, I'm asking that you, our town trustees, please seek direction from our town attorney if you see fit, but ultimately, please ask of our town administrator to promptly dismiss this citation and associated charges that are being lobbed at me. It is both significant financial burden and it will ultimately result in the loss of a critical full-time employee. I would very much hope that you would discuss and decide on this matter this evening, as your decision will most certainly impact our legal path forward. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Eckstein. That's all we have for people who have signed up for public comment. Let's go with item E, the Chafee Housing Authority ballot question consideration. Would you, Eric and Marjo, like to speak to us, please? And you're not limited to 3 minutes.
Great. Can we both come up?
Yeah.
Great. Wonderful. Great to see you all again. First of all, thank you very much for allowing us to jump up in the agenda. I know you have a heavy docket, so we'll try to be brief. I'm Eric Warner, as you may remember, CHA board member and chair of what we call the Ballot Initiative Committee. And this is our newly engaged, appointed interim executive director, Marjo Kurgis. Many of you know her and her great work, and we're super excited that she's part of the CHA. She, having just been with us for 2 weeks, is still kind of catching up to speed on all the machinations of how we got here to where I'm standing before you tonight. So if you have a question for her specific to some of the ballot stuff, she may defer to me, but I just want to give a quick recap of the two items on the resolution. The first ballot measure is a debrucing measure, a very standard fare, as you all know, many municipalities, special districts, school districts, in fact, 177 out of 100 78 in the state of Colorado have debruced. And what we're asking for is to be exempt from Tabor when it applies to some of our state sources of funding, such as grants. The James Place project down in Salida was put on hold for exactly this reason. We found out that as a multi-jurisdictional housing authority, we were subject to Tabor. And so we were literally about to vote on the financing package for that back in February when we found this out. So no impact to the taxpayer per se. This is grant money that if we aren't successful with this measure, we may actually have to just return to the grantor and the James Place project, even though we have contingency plans, may not be able to move forward. So again, very standard, no impact to the taxpayer. The second measure is the sales tax measure we're looking for. We're looking for a 0.5% sales tax applicable to the housing authority district. So Poncha would not be a part of that. However, we do have our council online here, and when Salida approved this unanimously last week, and the county, by the way, approved it unanimously this morning. The question came up from one of the council members, how it would work with Poncha. And according to the opinion of our council, and Dalton, if I get this wrong, please chime in. We could move forward if they joined, if Poncha decided as a town to join the housing authority, they would actually be immediately subject to that sales tax increase. It's not as though we would have to go back to the voters of Poncha to ask for that. So just a quick aside there. How we got to this, again, just quick recap. We engaged Magellan Strategies out of Denver back in February, a well-respected political polling firm, to conduct a survey of the county. We got double the number of responses we were hopeful for. Great, survey methodology, statistically valid, sound results. And it was very clear from the results of that a sales tax measure would have a chance. 58% of the respondents indicated they might vote for it, versus a property tax measure that would be DOA, no chance. So that's why we are proposing the sales tax measure, in part per the input from you all when we were here 2 months ago. We are adding the 12-year sunset clause. Why 12 instead of 10? Some of you may recall it was 10 at the time. We feel that time is good this year because it's a presidential election. You have pretty high engagement from all voters. And so we kind of carried that logic forward, saying in a 10-year deal, it would just be congressional elections, not a presidential election. So, again, given the greater chance of the public to weigh in on that in 12 years. So that's, as you'll see in the language, we've got the 12-year sunset. So I'm going to stop there. If you have any questions for me or Marjo about any of this, gladly entertain them. Or of our council who's online.
Trustee, questions? I guess we're good. So if there are no questions, is there a motion to pass resolution number 59?
I'll make that motion to pass resolution number 59.
Second.
So we got Rowe and Rosenauer. Do we need a roll call on this, Brian?
No.
No,
Let's
okay.
vote by majority.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Great. Good, so we pass it unanimously as well.
Thank you all very much. And just a footnote to all that, we meet as a housing authority board on Thursday, at which point we expect to pass this as well. It's kind of a weird process. We had to pass it first, bring it to the IGA members, then we finalize it, and then it goes to Lori to get on the ballot. And then we'll hopefully beginning of September know what our ballot numbers are. So thank you all very much.
And if I may just quickly say thank you, and I look forward to working with you, and I would love at some point to get on one of your work agendas, work session agendas, to just sort of tell you kind of what I'm seeing on the inside, direction and opportunities that I'm seeing within the housing authority, particularly if this ballot measure were to pass. Thank you.
Right. Thank you all. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, the next several items have to do with the Tri-View Chicago Ranch property is what we think of it as. And this is set up as a couple of public hearings. So I'd like to go ahead and open the public hearing with regard to the possible annexation of Tri-View. Now, would you like to do an introduction to it, Joel?
I would, please.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you, board. We have quite a few folk from Tri-View Metropolitan District here, and we have on Zoom, we have our water attorney, Andrea Benson, and our water engineer, Rachel Pittenger. So they'll be available this evening as well as our town attorney, Parker. So this is like you said, there are a couple things related. There are actually 3 items related to the Tri-View annexation that we need to visit this evening. And we split it up into 2 public hearings for ease of kind of controlling the conversation a little bit. The first is a public hearing, and we'll visit resolution number 58, which is takes a look at the eligibility and whether or not we deem it is eligible for annexation. Part of that is what we have to consider both the annexation agreement and the revegetation plan are part of that, as opposed to the ordinance which followed. So if it is deemed eligible, we take a look at ordinance number 15, which is the question whether or not to annex. So just because a property is eligible doesn't mean that it's annexed. Okay, so that motion, ordinance number 15, would have to be approved in order for the annexation to take place. And that will happen with one public hearing. We have the applicant, they have a presentation. Their presentation covers both of the items, but there's a secondary opportunity to touch on other things in the zoning part as well. So we'll hear from them, you'll hear from staff, we'll do public comment, and then there's deliberation, discussion, through that board. Should the property be eligible, should annexation take place, then we visit the question on what to zone the parcel, which is ordinance number 16. And that'll be a second public hearing. And again, the applicant can have an opportunity to present more if they would like, or say a few words or whatever. I have a shorter little presentation on zoning. And then there's that hearing specific to the zoning itself. Okay. So those are the kind of the lay of the land for this evening. As you all recall, and they'll get into it, this is a project, a discussion that I mean, with the town, we've been talking about the Chicago Ranch for a good 20 years on various things with Joyce Saylor at different points and Crosswinds Runway and all sorts of different things. It's been a big topic, and nothing could happen with the town. And then in December 30th, 2020, Tri-View Metropolitan District, they'll talk about who they are, but they purchased the land. And I don't even know if the ball dropped, and Jim McGrady had called me at New Year's Eve and said, hey, Joel, we want to work with the town and figure out how to come up with this collaborative project for them to use the water and then help convey the property over to the town and the town's interests and desire with a recreational kind of idea. So the conversation began 3.5 years ago, and we're here this evening. So, and many of you have been part of the conversation through that time, and others of you maybe not. So let's hear from the applicant about the project and their vision, et cetera, and we'll go from there.
Joe, you might just jump in just to clarify one thing. Is that okay, Mayor? Yeah, and so you basically are looking at 3 separate decisions tonight, and just so I'm clear with the trustees, your first decision, which is the eligibility decision, is basically whether the property is eligible to be annexed. And there's statutory criteria that have to be met. They've been addressed in the staff's memo. You're basically applying the statutory criteria to the application to the property to make sure it's actually eligible for annexation. We can go into those details perhaps maybe after presentations if you have any questions. The second decision is your discretionary decision, which is basically legislative, and you all decide whether or not you think the property should be annexed. And that's basically discretionary on your part. Just want to make sure that you're clear between the difference between the 2 decisions you're making in that first public hearing. I can answer any questions if you have any, but just want to comment on that.
The third decision is the zoning.
Right.
Thanks. So with that, Jim McGrady.
Yeah.
Hey, Jim, if you'd tell us your name and address.
Yes, my name is Jim McGrady. I'm the district manager for Tri-View Metropolitan District. I live in Colorado Springs, 2810 Andromeda Drive, as a matter of fact. So I'm, as I said, I'm the district manager. I have with me my assistant manager, Steve Sheffield, one of my board members, Jason Gross, and our attorney, Caitlin Quander. So Caitlin and I will be talking tonight to you, try to once again, kind of bring everybody up to speed a little bit, because I'm not sure everybody is seeing, as Joel mentioned, it's been 3.5 years since we started this process. And I'm not sure everybody was actually here the first time we started this whole thing, talking about the master plan that was done. But let me tell you a little bit, first of all, who Tri-View is. We're a little metropolitan district. We have about 10,000 residents live within our metropolitan district, located fully within the town of Monument. So Monument is halfway between Colorado Springs and Denver. So we have 5 core services that we provide. We basically provide water and wastewater. We do stormwater. We do parks and open space management. And we also do streets and roads. And so basically we're like a little city. And I'm more or less a city manager that would look over that. The bottom line is we have about 2,184 homes, 78 commercial businesses. So we don't have a lot of, we have a pretty good size, but not huge. I have about 11 parks we take care of. And the way we kind of viewed this Chicago Ranch is a partnership between Tri-View and the town of Buena Vista. Because while we have staff and we have equipment, we think that one of the ways that we can help is to make this a reality is to have our staff actually construct some of the infrastructure that we've talked about in the master plan. So next. So if you look at this map, this kind of is a really good map because it shows your rodeo grounds, and it also shows the Chicago Springs Ranch in this aerial photo. There's basically a barbed wire fence between the 2 parcels. And when we first purchased this, Joel and I did talk very early on, and it just appeared to us that the best way to fully develop this land was not to build houses on it or anything like that, but rather use it as a complementary piece to the rodeo grounds. And what this does is the rodeo grounds is plus or minus 300 acres, and Chicago Springs Ranch, as you see it there, is a plus or minus 300 acres. So this essentially becomes a 600-acre parks and open space area for the town of Buena Vista. Next. And this map is a little bit easier to see. It shows the continuity between the rodeo grounds and the Chicago Ranch. So as we talked a little bit about it, we had kind of a shared vision of some things that we could actually do together. And one of the first things we did is I hired a firm by the name of NES. They're one of the largest land planning corporation or companies within Colorado Springs. And there was a gentleman by the name of Chris Lieber, who was basically the Parks and Open Space Manager for the city of Colorado Springs. He had left the city and had gone into private practice with NES. He was the one that basically started meeting with the citizens of Buena Vista. We also didn't not only talk to the folks in Buena Vista, but we talked to the people that actually used some of the rodeo grounds. You know, you've got folks in the rodeo grounds such as the skeet shooting and target skeet shooting. You had the drone club, I think, was up there. You had model airplanes. You've got dog parks. We've got a pretty established recreation already at the rodeo grounds. We did not see our property as being, we didn't want that to be duplicative of what you've already got. So we started trying to look, what other things could we do? And one of the things that we identified was, gosh, this is a pretty big area and it's pretty flat. Are there such things as cross-country running trails? That was something that we heard in our public process, that there was generally a lack of that. There were, you know, high schools that wanted to have cross-country events that were of a certain length, and we could lay the trails out so that they could have that type of event. We identified one particular area. You know, you've got your little pump park across the street here. We've got an area on this ranch that is similar in nature, but it's got a lot of nice geographic relief. We actually identified that as a possible use for this area. So that's kind of what we looked at. So we started the master plan. We completed the master plan probably about a year and a half ago. A lot of people was very thankful for it. And then we started working on our water court case. And that water court case was basically the way this transaction took place is we would take the water rights that we purchased along with the land, take the water rights through water court, which we did. And finally I think it was May 18th of 2024, our water rights case became unappealable. So the water rights did in fact get converted from agricultural use to municipal use. So that kind of started the ball in motion. Now that was done, now we can start focusing on the revegetation plan and getting the property annexed into the town of Buena Vista. Now this is an interesting nuance. Not only does the land get annexed into the town of Buena Vista, but the town of Buena Vista actually becomes the owner of that land. So this is kind of a.
I don't mean to interrupt. Feel free to finish your sentence.
Okay, go ahead.
So should we annex the property? I know the county has already approved the revegetation plan.
Right.
Is that something that the town would reapprove or discuss? Or are we essentially, along with annexing the land, we would also be approving by, I don't know, would we be accepting?
You're actually directly approving it as part of your resolution, finding that it's eligible, so.
Yeah.
That's in the annexation agreement.
Including the revegetation plan?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Sure. So what this does is basically we end up, we got the water rights transferred. The town then gets the property from TriView. We give you this property. You in turn give us an easement back to this land so that we can complete the revegetation. So that's how that all works out. But ultimately, the land becomes Buena Vista's. And There's some language, we can talk a little bit about that if we need to, where we provide in-kind services or annual stipends. We also provide $100,000 at the time of this whole inclusion back to the town. So that's kind of helped pay for some of the staff time that you've spent and consultant time working on this. And so we felt there was a need to give some money back from that. So that's basically how this whole thing came about. And like I say, we finalized the court case. Next step is get this done, implement the revegetation plan and the master plan as it's been proposed. That said, turn the presentation over to Kate.
Good evening, my name is Caitlin Ponder and I serve as land use counsel for this annexation and zoning, and I've had the pleasure of working with your staff over the last 3.5 years on this. I'll kind of run through a couple of slides here. Jim kind of covered this one, so you could probably just move to the next one. And this slide just gives a little bit more of a detailed overview of the planning process for the master plan and some of the organizations that I know Jim kind of listed off, but it really was sort of a town-driven process paid for by TriView to come up with that master plan that was approved by this board back in March 2023. Next slide, please. So Joel and Jeff gave a great overview, kind of talking through the 3 different approval processes here. And my slides are the kind of boring legal slides that get to talk about that as well. As noted, there is an annexation agreement that is included within your packet. We have gone back and forth and negotiated that. It has a variety of terms, including the concept and process to convey the property within 45 days of annexation. And we had talked about kind of different timings, and that ended up being kind of the preference from staff and the town attorneys as far as timing, which we were amenable to. When you look at the statutory requirements for an annexation, the property must have that 1/6 contiguity required, and it must also be within your community's 3-mile area plan, which it is for both of those. It's contiguous with rodeo grounds, and you'd already previously done some visioning and planning within your 3-mile plan area. So procedurally, TriView submitted an annexation petition, and back on July 9th, you accepted that annexation petition and found it to be substantially compliant with the statute. Included with that packet is an annexation map that maps out and legally describes those acres, and that gets recorded to show what has been annexed. There's also an annexation impact report that gets prepared. This one's a little bit different, but when you think about an annexation that includes, a lot of residential development or something, that impact report really talks through what are the impacts to the infrastructure and the system that you might see. Here, where the goal really is to preserve that open space, there really aren't the infrastructure impacts that you most of the time kind of analyze in those impact reports. But nonetheless, it was prepared and included within that and walks through the criteria for you to see. On the zoning front, the Planning and Zoning Commission heard this matter last week on August 7th and recommended approval to you this evening. Next slide, please. So these are some more of the statutory criteria. I touched on the 1/6 contiguity already. You also have to have a community of interest that exists between the area proposed to be annexed in the town. Here, we think both because of the efforts on the master planning to kind of vision those together, and also the opportunity to conserve some areas and active recreation areas to serve the town and county residences, that you do have a community of interest here. Here, the next criteria, the site is urban or will be urban in the near future. While the intent is to maintain it as open space, to be clear, it is within your growth area boundary, within your 3-mile plan, and that's one of the key components when you think about what is your kind of intended urban area. And it is part of the area of desired growth. And even in the 3-mile plan, it talks about it as an engaging open space and recreational hub, so really consistent there. And then the last criteria, integration and capable of being integrated with the town. And I think that the master plan really helped vision what the community was looking for that integration. Next slide, please. So these are some of the findings that are probably spelled out in that resolution that we talked about earlier in the ordinance itself. You must conclude these various findings, compliance with the statute. Here, we don't have to do an annexation election because as the property owner, TriView can petition in. You do have the ability to impose certain terms and conditions, and really the annexation agreement is the way that we think about doing that. And your staff and we have had some really great conversations that included some conditions that were important, particularly around kind of that initial payment and then kind of that ongoing payment or services, because obviously if you're taking on this property, you want to be able to service it appropriately and ensure that it is kind of there for your public. And so we wanted to be able to help kind of with that transition. And here, no election is needed, so you can annex by ordinance. Next slide, please. Here are some highlights on the annexation agreement itself. It talks about the open space recreation zoning intention, talks about the conveyance of the property. There are two kind of key conditions on that conveyance. The first is TriView really wanted to be sure that this is maintained as public open space and recreation. So there's a covenant that would be included, and I think that you probably like that as a commitment to your public as well. And then the second is an easement that allows TriView the ability to come back on, continue to maintain and service some water facilities, specifically some recharge ponds. I think Joel might have a picture of kind of the area in his slides, and you can see the recharge ponds there. And then also just to do general maintenance and then the revegetation plan component. So we need access to the property to do that. On the public infrastructure components, there is kind of that upfront $100,000 for some initial development and construction for some initial trails. And I think that the TriView's been kind of working directly with your staff on exactly where they want to direct those funds initially, and that's really your choice on where you want those funds and that work to go. And then on an ongoing basis for 10 years, in the agreement, it basically does the math of what an individual, I think it's like what is it, 10,040 hours, but it's like a part-time person, a part-time person or payment, really depending on what the town needs, as far as, we really need a person up here helping us maintain it or construct it, or, the money works because we've got the staffing we need. So we can kind of flex in and out as far as people help or monetary help there. And then the revegetation plan, and this it's so easy to say, it's just a bullet right there, but it was a really concerted effort between Chaffey County, the town, and TriView. Everyone had their experts, everyone had their water attorneys. I don't know how many site visits there were. There was a lot of work that really went into this to make sure that the revegetation plan is very holistic and has a really ongoing process of monitoring, continuing to measure. And Jim can go into lots and lots more detail than I can on the re-veg plan, as can your consultants online, on how we're really going to make sure that this becomes kind of back to its natural state and they studied all the existing vegetation out there to bring it forward. So next slide. And as we said, we're doing a combined presentation, so we don't have to kind of get up before you twice, but the second public hearing you will have is on the zoning itself. Under your code and the statute, zoning can be accomplished simultaneously with annexation. Depending on timing, sometimes you make it so it's not effective until after the date of the annexation ordinance. Tonight, we're lucky we get to do them both this evening. And then let's see if there was anything else. And then touching on the fact that we were before Planning and Zoning Commission last week with recommendation of approval to zone the property as open space recreational district. Next slide, please. What's interesting is with an annexation, I'm sure you're very familiar with your rezoning criteria in your code when you consider a property being zoned from one zone district to another zone district. But here, where the property is county and zoned in the county, you actually look to your code, chapter 15, on annexation for the criteria of what is the appropriate zoning to apply here. That said, so the language in the code is no annexation of land shall create an unreasonable burden on the physical, social, economic, or environmental resources of the town. When we were looking at that, really a lot of it kind of speaks to some of your rezoning criteria, even though it is a different code section. We talk about, the property is located within the comprehensive plan growth boundary area. It's in your 3-mile plan. And it really allows the implementation of that comprehensive the rodeo grounds and Chicago Ranch master plan that was done. So it's kind of that next step to implement that. They will not create adverse impacts to the surrounding area. And if anything, our real hope along with town staff, I think, is to make sure that this is a value add, right? That this is a recreation and open space that enhances surrounding properties and the community. There are adequate public facilities available to serve the property because it is so limited in nature, with it being an open space and rec use intention. And then the property will be revegetated to its natural state. So with that, we believe the criteria for rezoning are met. We believe the criteria for annexation are met, and we do request your approval this evening. Thank you.
Trustees, we're open for questions from our staff and their presenters.
Maybe you could give the staff presentation first.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just that might have some answers.
Yeah, good.
I don't know.
Carry on.
Okay, so again, we'll take a look at just these first two items and then visit the zoning a little bit later. Overview of the request. So there's approximately 294 acres just south of the rodeo grounds along 321, County Road 321. We are visiting the annexation agreement and the revegetation plan agreement. And you know, Jim was talking about the timing. Oh, we went through water court, we did this, and then we focus on the revegetation and annexation agreements. Those actually began in 2021, and we've been hashing that out, like Caitlin was referencing, hashing those out for this entire time. But we could focus the energy on actually going through the final steps of the revegetation plan and then the annexation agreement, going through the process of annexation. So it's been happening a long time. And again, we've got this is half of the rodeo grounds Chicago Ranch master plan. So and it's pretty integral to that. The annexation agreement also is contingent upon the zoning later too. So if we go through, it's eligible, we annex, yes, and then no, we actually want it R1 zoning, then it won't annex it. So just a little point. Okay, so again, here's a vicinity map. Subject properties in brown, just south of town limits of the rodeo grounds. You notice just south of the subject property is state lands. We've got some agricultural and on the west and the east as well. Next. Caitlin went through the eligibility criteria very well. The findings that they came up with are consistent with town's findings, so don't need to repeat what they put together, but remember, you have to find one no less than 1/6 contiguity. There's a community of interest between the area. The area is urban or will be urbanized, and those are all consistent. There are a number of other criteria later that are not applicable to this, so they don't have any impact, and those were outlined in the town attorney memo in your packet. Some points in the annexation agreement, and some of this is repetitive. It's intended to be used as open space and part of this recharge facility. There is a little map there. I'll show you the southwest corner. There are two little, it's one facility with up to two little ponds that would be store the water, and then the water will seep down and go to Cottonwood Creek over time. Okay. Again, if it is zoned open space, it has to be open space for the town for a minimum of 20 years. Can't imagine we would do anything but that is important to have in there. There is this money, financial and in-kind contribution for master plan implementation. This first year again is $100,000, and that's some kind of combination thereof. They have been working with Earl and the rec department, Shane, about what to do and what the priorities would be. And then after this, for 10 years, either 1,040 hours or $38,000 or some combination toward maintenance, et cetera. And again, the town will take over the land 45 days after the annexation goes into effect. Revegetation agreement, just a few points on this. So Triview has to comply with the revegetation agreement. They're at their own cost, and then there's stipulations for them to pay town's costs in evaluating progress on that. So there's some regular meetings set up. There's some different points in time where there are, like every 3 years, there's, you know, these checkpoints and baseline monitoring, et cetera. If you went through the revegetation agreement, you would have seen some fancy calculus in there as well. And these are all part of what the town will work with Triview on, and there will be some town staff time as part of that, but the cost for evaluating progress, they will recoup town for that. There's great flexibility built in, integrated management, you know, a variety of active and passive management options that we evaluate every 3 years. There's check-ins. It's town's decision as to whether or not it is revegetated. Yet there are criteria, you know, that the town will use to evaluate that. There's protocol outlined within the plan. There's baseline data, which has already been collected this last week. There's a control or reference property established just north on the actual rodeo grounds property. We estimate this would be 10 to 15 years, could be 8 years sometime, but 10 years is in there. I know the plan did discuss 10 to 15, but somewhere in there, depending on when it's revegetated. And it's very cooperative. We put it together. I mean, there were arguments on, do we put toe flax in there? Wait, what is a point intercept method? What's plant canopy coverage? What are these things? Are we doing litter or not? We had Dr. Redente, who's one of the expert mine reclamation experts, who's retired. And then we had Right Water Engineers, and we hired a consultant with them, and then the county was brought in later to then add additional things. And so there was so much back and forth, but we set it up intentionally, assuming none of us will be here in 6 years, and someone else, future town, will be taking it, and future Triview will be taking it over, and we need to know what the protocol is. Next, so annexation criteria, really, we're visiting section B, chapter 15. No annexation of the land shall create an unreasonable burden on the physical, social, economic, or environmental resources to the town. And we can condition the annexation, which is what the annexation agreement is all about. And next one. So the burdens, are they unreasonable or not? There is additional staff time. We are getting some financial and time contributions for especially the maintenance side of things and for the work that we've been doing. They are also paying for the review process for that revegetation plan. Added infrastructure and maintenance, yeah, it's going to be part of a growing town. They are financially contributing to some of that, and we have a piece of land, a piece of property that's coming into the town, which is certainly a benefit. And so do not feel there is any kind of unreasonable burden there. Yeah, there's a water being removed from the property, which is not in our control. It's a water rights, water court issue. And the revegetation plan is more robust than under normal water court, what you would get. And so it's significantly more robust, I would say. So there is a reasonable mitigation there. And again, we've got the master plan, we've got some help implementing it, we've got the conveyance to the town, it creates a wildlife corridor from the water tanks. There's BLM property that borders the water tanks all the way down through the state land, so we have this tremendous wildlife corridor with that. And as you see in the annexation agreement, there's discussion of additional agreements, and we've got some cooperative efforts on potential, some water storage or other things that are happening separate from this. So some good cooperation. So here's a couple, just a few pictures of the property. You can see it is very open. That's the neighbor to the east. Earlier there was a, and one slide before, you can see the south and the west there. So agricultural in nature, that's the property to get a feel for it. This is taken from the northeast corner. So this first set of actions for the trustees would be approve, deny, or continue resolution number 58, finding the property eligible for annexation. Remember, we went through those criteria, keeping in mind the annexation agreement is attached to that. And so it would be the time to discuss those items. However, even we can continue discussing in ordinance number 15, which would be whether or not to actually annex it, right? So even if you say, yeah, well, resolution 15 does not mean people are in favor of annexing. So we visit that. And so we would need one vote on the resolution. If that is a yay, then we'll visit the second one. So with that, it would be time for clarifying questions and then public comment. And yeah.
There you go.
Clarifying question. I see the Courtney's behind the dais up here, or behind the podium. Hello. I see that they're noted in the legal agreement in part for notification from the revegetation plan. I did read the revegetation plan. I know that they have expressed concerns in the past about some of the integrated pest management programming regarding herbicides and pesticides, given that they're very close to that property. If that were something we wanted to continue discussing despite annexation, is there space to continue that conversation around ensuring the revegetation plan doesn't include certain types of chemicals that would be concerning to their property, things like that?
So quick answer is if you're gonna look to change the revegetation plan, it's already been approved by the court.
Yeah.
And so you would have to basically, probably continue the hearing for additional discussions with them. They'd have to go back to court. It's a pretty significant change. So I mean, it's not like it's impossible, but it would be a very big discussion to be had again. If you don't like the re-veg plan for certain reasons and you want to make changes to it. Yeah, so.
I think if we're talking about something relatively specific in terms of one piece of the integrated pest management plan, and this might be a question for you both, is that something we'd have to do through court? Like, would it need to be a legal proceeding or could it be a conversation?
Well, if you wanted to make it legally binding as part of an agreement, part of the plan, you have to have us change it in our agreement, have to go back to court and have the court reapprove it, and that would be the whole
But if we
process.
didn't want it to be legally binding necessarily, and
Could you-
still wanted to discuss some minor changes, is that something that we could do?
So minor changes, any change at all
Yeah.
is gonna be something that has to go back to court, but not major, it has to go to court. But if you wanted to say, can you use your best efforts? They're not gonna be, it's not gonna be anything in writing, it's not gonna be an obligation unless it's changed in the actual agreement, the plan.
So I got one clarification on that component of it. The revegetation plan is a more holistic component of it, where you're talking about the integrated pest management plan, which is actually an annual thing that is approved by the town.
So it's not
Okay.
necessarily part of the revegetation
Correct.
process. Okay.
And so within that, and this is where we kind of let the county take the lead. They do a lot more revegetation plans. They have a noxious weed department, stuff like that. Within that is the integrated pest management thing that annually identifies what methods they're gonna use, whether it's mechanical, pulling weeds, chemical, biological. Biological is kind of earmarked as don't use that. And it is basically by the most economical means and with the least possible hazard to people, property, and environment. So the first integrated pest management plan will be due by TriView April 15th of 2025. And perhaps that's an opportunity to have that conversation.
So there is space within the IPM agreement review annually to have a conversation about what tactics are being used.
And the town has to approve it.
And we have to approve that. Okay.
So don't listen to me on that, I apologize. I thought it was part of
No, it's okay.
vegetation.
That's helpful. It's very complicated, so.
Just that was, you're hitting on what I was looking at too with the pest management plan, because that Chicago Spring feeds their working farm.
Yeah.
And so when chemicals are used, because you can't use biological, and I don't picture a ton of people hand pulling, what it will be done to keep those chemicals out of that spring so that water that feeds their animals doesn't roll into their, or is there any way to prevent that? That's.
Let me perhaps describe how this revegetation plan is going to work. As you looked at those pictures, the one thing you should have noted is that it's pretty lush out there right now. In fact, I was just out there earlier this afternoon. There's a lot of grass, there's a lot of clover, there's a lot of stuff that is really done well in a very wet environment. So what we are looking at is kind of reversing that watering process. So when you start a dry up, what's going to happen is you're going to see the plants that are basically used to seeing a lot of water, they're going to begin to die out. Also mixed in that seed mix that's out there, that vegetation, there's a lot of stuff that likes drier environments. That's going to begin to propagate. So you're going to be losing some of the coverage that basically is really used to a lot of water, and it's going to be replaced by other types of vegetation that doesn't like water. So what we intend to do is let that process take its place, or go through this process. If we see weeds, and right now there's a few small areas of Canadian thistle, that is probably the one weed that we're going to pay particular attention to. And what we're going to do is, there's a lot of techniques that you can use to control that. One of the best techniques is cut the darn seed heads off. And that's something that you can do 2 or 3 times a year, is to get rid of those seed heads on your Canadian thistle. So while we are not, we're not into a situation where we're anticipating using heavy chemicals or anything like that, we recognize the Chicago Spring. We're going to try to stay away from that. We're also considering allowing some cattle grazing. That has the ability to kind of mitigate some weeds as well. So we're going to just kind of play it by ear. As Joel mentioned, there's an annual meeting that we get together, and that this was something that TriView insisted upon, is that we don't just walk away from this for 3 years and then come back and say, gee, how can we do? We're going to meet every 3 years or every year during this whole process and kind of lay out a game plan. Because sometimes you can't foresee. If all of a sudden you get a wet period of time, that, Buena Vista gets, 7 inches of rain a year? What if all of a sudden we get a lot more? We could have an issue that we need to deal with. So we're going to meet on a regular basis and try to, figure out the game plan for the next year. So there's obviously a time. We have experts from Chaffee County. We have experts in our staff that are going to be monitoring this very closely. And we'll see what we can do to make sure that it gets done properly. So that's all I have.
You have a question?
I do. There's one general question for the TriView folks. What in general, what's the benefit for TriView to not own this property?
Well, good question, Andrew. I've asked that question myself, but I think the bottom line is that we see this as a Buena Vista project. I mean, really and truly, we helped with the master plan. We paid $100,000 to get NES to come up here and help do the master plan. But this shouldn't be viewed as a Colorado Springs entity coming up to Buena Vista, to Chaffee County, and, you know, coming up with a way to utilize our property. We want this to be a locally driven property. We think the best way to do that is to make sure that the town of Buena Vista actually owns the property and is invested in the property, and we're here to kind of assist to make sure that this actually comes to fruition.
Thanks.
Any other questions from?
Aggie, you got a question?
Didn't have a question.
Oh, Devin.
No.
Okay, if we have no questions, I'd like to open it for public comment from our citizens who are here. Is there anybody who would like to ask a question or say anything? Please approach the podium and give your name and address for the record, please.
I am Monica Courtney. I live on Rodeo Road on the old homestead parcel of the old Chicago Ranch. And I run an animal sanctuary there. We have 40 acres across from this proposed park, and we're happy about the park. I think it's going to be a great asset to the town, as we see many people go out there and walk dogs and try to get out into the open. So I have a couple concerns bringing up the chemicals. The proposed maintenance plan, spraying or whatever you might plan 4 times a year. As you know, we own a spring up there. The ditch goes to the land of the proposed park, comes down to us. We feed a duck pond with it, we irrigate our land, and we're just concerned about our well, the groundwater. We are concerned about the wind. We are down drift. We get a lot of wind out there, insane winds. There is barely ever a day with no wind. There's constant motion of elements, like 5 elements every day. So whatever is applied, it concerns me that it might somehow migrate and leach into our water or be conveyed down to us by ways of the ditch. I'm concerned for the hawks that come back. I live there. I have noticed Swainson Hawk Colony comes back every year to nest on our trees. Sadly, they lose their young every year to traffic increase and speeding. And I would like to point out that they have a hunting ground up on that land since many decades. There is a rich biodiversity in our spring with birds, insects, beneficial insects. There is antelopes, there is wildlife, and it is a cycle of nature that exists up there. It's a rural land lot. The only disruption is really the cows that go up there or people who walk maybe. And I'm just concerned about how maybe a chemical application is going to disrupt the harmony of this biodiversity and ecosystem that's up there. Because when I go to the spring, it's amazing the birds that are up there. It's like a whole new habitat of life. And so that's something I wanted to point out, because we are the closest, most immediate stakeholders downdrift from the park. I also want to tell you I currently struggle with health issues that I just found out. And so I'm really worried that maybe the whatever chemicals, glyphosates, neonites, whatever is used could affect my health or anybody's health. I want to point out that the binding ingredients of a lot of EPA-approved chemicals are not disclosed. Those are the harmful ones. It's not the main ones. It's the ones you don't read on the label. And I know that EPA-approved means really nothing. It's a pretty saying, and I've done my research. So I would like to just ask if you could please consider in your proposal and revegetation, use the least amount of chemicals possible to protect our water, our health, anybody's health really that comes in touch with that, and keep it as natural as possible. I would really appreciate that. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Courtney. Yes, sir, please approach the podium. Please give your name and address for the record.
Bill Confer, 248 North, Sangre de Cristo. In my previous life, I did a lot of weed control and mitigation and whatnot with goats. I'd like to know if you've been considering anything with goats in terms of weed control. What chemicals are we talking about that might even be needed if we're? Yeah, I know that we had tremendous success. There's a lot of herds in the state where they're going in and completely wiping out weeds, if that's anything that we're talking about, or if it's reseeding, those kinds of things. I just was wondering about clarification on that.
Thank you. Are there more comments, questions from the public? And Brian, do we have anybody on Zoom who would like to chime in here?
We do not have anybody that has their hand raised. If there is anybody online that would like to speak to it, please raise your hand and we'll come back to it. So nobody at the moment.
Okay, thank you, Brian.
Can I just address the last speaker?
Oh, you may.
Just the last gentleman that spoke, the revegetation plan is in the packet online, and it does include extensive information about what kinds of cattle grazing or other animals might be used, what types of seeds and reseeding and overseeding might be possible. So it's worth reading through in the packet. It's all in there in detail.
Yeah, well, the thing about goats is they prefer broadleaf weeds. They don't like grass. So it's really a viable option.
Thanks for sharing.
Anything else from the public? Okay, I'd like to close the public comment. And trustees, you're free to ask questions of our staff primarily. But when you have your questions answered, then we'd like to consider the resolution number 58.
So, so just to clarify, so for when the annual, when it comes up for IPM each year, I guess there would be room to think of how it's going to be done. And we could even, if we wanted to, bring Courtney's in to make sure they could see what is happening in that process. Is that something that's possible within, since it's something that is going to be visited?
Yeah, the meeting just scheduled, you know, that we're gonna do it at this time of year and to review what the management for that year is coming up. And a lot of it is gonna depend on what, you know, what the conditions are. So perhaps goats are viable, or perhaps, you know, you need a herd effect with some cattle, or perhaps nothing. Perhaps just letting it's completely passive from one year to another. Perhaps there's an area of Canadian thistle that needs some netting, those sorts of things. And so that is all up for review. There's going to be the proposal, and the town will look at that, and how that meeting takes place has not been contemplated. So certainly could.
I just wanted
to. How that is. So.
Yeah.
To answer your question specifically, it actually is not a requirement that we have to. It actually is a stipulation that TriView, when they create that pest management plan, have to provide written notice, not just to the town and county, but also the Courtneys.
I know that there's written notice, but I'm talking about the process so they know what it is. And if there is questions beforehand, is if you give a notice at 10 days and hey, the process, things are paid for, things are planned. So what I'm getting at, is there a space for a conversation? You know, hey, we might apply chemicals here, but when we're near the Chicago Spring, we will apply a different method so we can ensure that chemicals don't, you know, get into the watershed and then float down to their horses and their ducks and their.
Yeah, I think same request. I just want to make sure they're included in the process, not just the final decision notification.
It's the closest, you know, it's There's a family there, and I think that should be considered. That's important.
That's something we can do.
Other trustee questions?
Two questions. The timing of some of the capital improvements there regarding trails and those type of things, are those staged after the revegetation is deemed complete, or will they be concurrent?
The plan, they are planned to be concurrent. And they're like wherever there's a trail that is excluded from needing to be revegetated.
Right. You build a trail, you import road base, you imported Canada thistle.
Yeah.
And so that will be part of the challenge of the capital. So in the case that you say, well, this Canada thistle is a result of the capital project, is that still included in the revegetation agreement?
There's not a stipulation in there on this is a cause, this was caused by the trail.
It's basically, it's there.
It's there.
Please
Gotta do
remedy it.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're not waiting for the revegetation to be completed before any of the capital. And then are the capital costs, is that something we'll be visiting in our budget over the coming years to spend that? So that's coming out of our budget to.
With the exception of their contribution. Yeah.
Correct. So their contribution, is that equitable to defray some of our ongoing expenses in future years of maintaining it, at least in the first 10 years? Does that seem like a fair contribution to defray our cost?
Yeah, and there's a, there's the plan, and there's in the zoning presentation, there's a picture of the master plan, that area. There's a couple of trails that come through that area, but most of the Chicago Ranch plan, the rodeo grounds plan is contained to the north. There's a little bit in the bike, like this bike track that comes down in there. And so there'll be the creation of the trail and then some maintenance it seems like it seems equitable from what I can tell, without knowing like how fast we're gonna implement some of those things.
Sure.
Right? And certainly without that contribution, it would take a while, I think, this is like intended as a seed to help get the plan going.
Yeah, I recognize that and say thank you.
Here's this little map. It went away. Here's this, the kind of that dotted line is generally, the property line.
Yeah.
And so south of that bright yellow line. So you can see there's some trails and there's some different soft surface, some paved trail, and then more like almost like a natural grade surface, Yeah. So which doesn't require a ton of you.
No, I think it's very good if the stars align and you can get the trails in relatively soon, so that they are, so that their disturbance is covered under the revegetation plan to ensure the imported weed seeds that inevitably will come when you import material for a trail. We have that covered. That's all. Thanks.
I know we've closed the public comment, but he went away. Never mind. Somebody had there.
Did you have any questions or comments? So sure.
I do feel that there is concern over chemicals being used, which is good. We have worked on this project for quite a while now, and it's something that I feel most of the community is looking forward to seeing it developed. It will offer new means of recreation for our community. But it does have a couple of small concerns.
Thanks, Cindy. Okay, Is there anyone who's ready to make a motion to,
Can I
for
say-
resolution 58?
can I make one more quick comment?
Please.
You know, kind of being a newcomer here, but kind of watching this from afar and reading through the packet and understanding the history of it. Sure seems like you guys have really approached this from the inception as with the intent of being a collaborator. And that's appreciated.
I'd like to think so, so.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, it's been great to see the collaboration and the work that's been put in before this has come to us in this forum and how much help it was with master plan as well. You know, and this is something that's gonna be for generations to enjoy. So I think it's a great project.
And there was a lot of public input, you know, that you took the time to make sure that the plan was well done. It's good.
Thank you. I'll make a motion to approve resolution number 58.
Second.
Okay, so we have Rowe and Rice. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, that motion passes. Now, we will. So we have determined for ourselves that Triview is eligible for the annexation. And then ordinance number 15 is for us to decide whether we would want to annex it. Do we approve the annexation? So we can discuss that, or somebody can make a motion for both.
Move to approve motion 15. I second.
Approving ordinance 15.
Ordinance 15, excuse me. My motion is to approve the ordinance.
Hike. Rosenauer and Hike. Okay, is there further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? Okay, great. Ordinance number 15 is passed. Okay.
And we hear you loud and clear about the annual meeting and review of that and bring it.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we will have a public hearing. Do we close that public hearing?
The public hearing's closed, you voted, that's already done, and there will be a new public hearing on zoning.
So now we'll open a public hearing with regard to zoning of the Triview annexation.
Mayor, I just recommend you just take notice of the applicant's presentation in the earlier public hearing, because they addressed the zoning as well, and so they don't have to repeat themselves in this public hearing. Just for the record, that's included in this as well.
Good, thank you. That was an efficient approach to it, to have covered that in the first public hearing.
Just wanted to hear it again.
Really, it related to this public hearing with regard to zoning, but thank you for covering that all at once. So, Joel, do you have more to say?
I've got just some points specific to the zoning. We've covered some items, but there are some other items, and then I'll have public comment after that.
Good.
So again, this is a hearing to visit the actual zoning of the Triview property. Currently, it's in the county. There's a county zoning, and when we bring it into town, we have to apply town zoning to it. So that's what this is. Next slide, please. So here's the two different maps, the town zoning map and the county zoning map on the left. It's the town zoning map. You see the big rectangle in green, the rodeo grounds. OSR, open space, recreation. I do not have a town zoning map with this property to the south because that's the end of the town boundary. So, but you can see what the neighboring property in the town is. The subject property on the right is, this is the county, the rodeo grounds is just above it. You see county, rural, everywhere that's green, residential is yellow, industrial is purple, and kind of the gray, of course, is town. So surrounding area, and you saw from the photos earlier, it's agricultural open space with a couple residences nearby. Next. Again, we're taking a look, there's no criteria, we're looking at the unreasonable burden on physical, social, economic, or environmental resources in the town. And this is really the zoning, the conditions for the zoning as well, okay. Keep going. Some key points. One, it's entirely consistent with a comprehensive plan. The Parks and Open Space section of the comp plan talks all about trail connectivity, added recreational opportunities, et cetera, open space, keeping open space open. In our areas of desired growth, which is part of the 3 mile plan, area 11 is Chicago Ranch area. And that area in particular is called out specifically within the 3 mile plan as becoming part of town as an open space recreational area. So it's pretty consistent with 3 mile plan. And then we had the master plan that was approved that integrates both of these properties. And here's this slide that you saw just in the last hearing that shows again the rodeo grounds with the Chicago Ranch attached to it. The Chicago Ranch is just south of that dashed yellow line. You can see it's the few trails, primarily that area, recognizing the wildlife corridor, recognizing the proximity to the state lands just to the south. That was we tried to focus the recreational components up north, like the high intensity recreation components to the north, and then the kind of the running bike paths down to the south and equestrian paths down to the south. Next. So on the August 7th last week, we did hold a hearing. The Planning and Zoning Commission are recommending unanimously that you all approve the zoning as open space recreation. I put the draft minutes in the packet. Thank you. So you can see what the conversation was. I know it's not what we like is to have one hearing back to back with you all so that you can see those. They're not the approved minutes. But there were a few inquiries about the revegetation plan and annexation, which is all not part of the zoning, but they're curious, historic use, et cetera. But you have those minutes, and so certainly is you can continue hearing too if you want to see them approved. So the question would be to approve or deny the zoning as open space recreation for the Triview property, or continue the hearing to a date certain. And that's staff presentation on the zoning.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Are there questions for Mr. Benson? Or any other staff?
The 20-year, you don't plan on ending that in 20 years and building houses out there, do you? I mean, do we want it to stay a lot longer than 20 years?
That was a
It's going to take several years to get that where we want it, development-wise. And if they plan on only doing it for 20 years, it's not worth it.
No, there's there's absolutely no services anywhere nearby, you know. So it'd take a heavy investment. You know how hard it's been to get a water line just down to connect Sunset Vista to the Public Works.
Right.
So there's absolutely no plans. It is the future town can do anything and rezone, and so that was really, I think that you guys wanted that 20 years in there to make sure that they didn't convey it to the town, and then we said, hey, let's build things, you know. The town has absolutely no plans of doing anything else, but I can't control future town.
You mentioned at one point an east-west runway.
There was a crosswinds runway
Of
that
course, now it'd have to fall into the quarry.
But it's over
At the airport.
further to the east is where that had been.
I see.
I think it actually was there. You can still see a scar, a dirt scar. Way back when.
Okay,
Yeah, but it's a little far from the airport.
other questions for staff? Okay, is someone ready to make,
Public comment, if the applicant wants to say anything, they have a right to do that too, just to be clear.
who does?
If the applicant wants to
Oh.
say anything there,
You,
I don't think so.
okay,
just want to make sure they have an opportunity.
okay. Is there anybody in the public who would like to speak? I'll open public comment first. But is there anyone who would like to speak? Anyone online who would like to speak?
Nobody's got their hand, but Charles Ligonville keeps raising his hand. I don't know. I just want to give him a chance if he's got something. There he goes.
There you go.
Do you have a question? You're muted right now, Charles. So you're still muted. We can't hear you.
Sorry, I was just invited.
There we go. Now he's gone again. Didn't understand what he meant. There he is. Now you can speak.
I'm actually just part of the community. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I help a lot of the people that's not in the area do short-term rentals, and they do. I mean, they love the community. The people love the people that come there love the community. So that's why I was on the call. I was invited, and they said, "Hey, Charles, you're in Florida, but you've been doing so much to help the place." So that's all I was. I got in the call. I've learned a lot. So, and yeah, I'm a Florida realtor too. I mean, I do a lot. So just hey, that's all I was. That's why I keep adding my little 2 cents if I could.
Okay. All right,
Okay,
thanks for your attention.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Comments, questions, concerns? No one else online?
Corinne.
Or is there somebody there?
We do. Corinne.
Kelly?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry, I've been following along through the entire meeting, but we haven't hit the short-term rental section
No,
yet.
we have not.
No, okay, sorry, Charles. Charles threw me off and I wanted to make sure I didn't miss anything. Thank
Okay,
you.
hang in there, we'll get there.
Thank you. I'll just drive down too.
Okay.
More than merrier.
Okay, great. Any public comment? Okay, I'm closing public comment. Are there any other trustee questions, or is there a motion to
I'll make a motion, Mayor.
pass ordinance number 17?
That's 16.
16?
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance number 16, series 2024.
Second.
We got LaCretzi and Rice. Okay, is there further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, the motion passes. So the zoning will be handled properly.
Thank you, Mary. And just thanks, Andrea and Rachel, for being available on the call as well. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
All right.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thanks
Thank you.
thanks for working with us on all this.
Absolutely. It's been a long time.
Yeah. Great. Yeah, okay. Let's take a little stretch break.
Thank you.
2 minutes? What, how many minutes?
She said 2 minutes. That seems pretty short. 5, how about 5?
That's another thing that you
Okay, please, take your seats. Okay, so we are now on item C, which is another public hearing. I will open the public hearing. This has to do with the rezoning of 105 Barnwood Drive. Joel, are you covering this one too?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
But, Mayor, just, I have to recuse myself from this just because of, campaign contributions and appearance, so I'll excuse myself for this and then,
Does someone have your number to get you
I'll
back?
text you. Hold up. Yes, okay.
Okay.
Okay, I will be outside.
The car record will note that.
I'll text you.
Yeah, it's legal.
Yeah, so this is a item that was agendized and we got word, maybe just last week, right before the packet came out, to a request from the applicant to continue the hearing until a little later, just because of a variety of reasons. And so I do not have a presentation. The applicant is not planning on giving a presentation. And so it is a public hearing, it's agendized. And so staff really requests if you guys open the hearing, open the public comment, there might be some comment
I think
on
that
it.
could be, yeah.
And then we request that the hearing be continued. Should the board want to.
I'd like to open the public comment then. And the applicant doesn't want to speak with us tonight, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. Is there anyone in the public who would like to speak as part of the public hearing? Nothing? Yes?
What kind of facilities are they gonna have for the people who may have trailers, tents, or whatever on the property?
Do you have an answer for that, Joel?
Yeah, so when we get, this is a question about rezoning the property. So it's about rezoning the property from highway commercial to light industrial. And within that rezoning, all the board is taking a look at is the camping and the facilities and all that is not a part of that question. There's a camping, a question about camping that is coming before the board, continued hearing August the 27th, which we get into what is the definition of a structure and a camping and what are those sorts of components. And that's a different topic than this is just about, do we take the zoning from highway commercial zone district and put it into light industrial zone district? So that I'd say on the 27th of August, we'll be talking about that question. And this is a different question.
And we did receive an email that town follow-up distributed to us, basically in opposition of the change in zoning. This is from Battaglia, Fred Battaglia.
And we'll put this in our, this will be in the public comment.
Okay.
Yep.
Great.
Absolutely.
Okay, is there anyone else? Questions, comments? Okay, I'm gonna close the public comment. Is there a motion from the board to reschedule the, or to continue the public hearing to a later date, that being September 24th, 24?
Motion to extend the hearing to September 24th.
Second.
Okay, so we have Rosenauer and Hike.
Just for the record, it'll be at this location at 7 o'clock
Okay.
or later.
Community Center, 7 PM, beginning of the meeting, September 24th of 24. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, so the hearing is continued to that date. Okay, so now we'll move on to item D, which is a public hearing again. So I'll go ahead and open the public hearing. This has to do with short-term rentals, and it has some changes that are related to license categories, and then some just basic code cleanup. So, Paula, is this yours?
Yes, but should we wait till trustee Lucrezi makes it back in?
Oh, yeah, okay.
Here.
Okay. Nice job, whoever did that. Good job, Maggie.
No.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so,
Sorry, I just need to make time when Gina joined the meeting again.
Yeah.
So sorry about that. Needed to add that in there. Okay, thank you for waiting. All right, Mayor and trustees, as outlined in the memo in your packet, the proposed amendments to the short-term rental STR municipal code will clarify existing code, remove code that is no longer applicable, and include a new section relevant to any renewal applicants who change categories are subject to restrictions currently in place for the category they are switching to. Currently, no specific rules within the STR regulations prohibit a licensee's ability to receive a license regardless of category change if they renew on time. If the ordinance is adopted, if the license is licensed in a primary resident or in-county non-primary resident category and submits a renewal application that indicates they are now in the out-of-county or entity-owned category, the renewal license will be subject to the license caps in place for that category. This creates the possibility that the renewal application may be placed on the wait list for a license if the cap is already met. Currently, 235 short-term rental licenses are issued. The out-of-county entities category has a 6% cap, allowing for 117 licenses, which have all been issued, and currently there are 10 applicants on the waiting list for out-of-county non-entity licenses. Also, in the proposed ordinance changes, section 6-125 adds a subsection to reflect what will occur if it is determined that the applicant seeking to renew has changed categories from primary county to out-of-county or entity-owned. This allows it to place the application on hold in the order it was received until after the renewal cycle is complete. If it is determined that a license is available for the applicant to change categories, a license will be issued as normal. If no licenses are available, the applicant is subject to the code already in place and will not be issued a renewal license. Their fee will be returned if paid, and the application will be placed at the bottom of the waiting list. When a license is granted, they will be charged the current renewal fee. Also in the code cleanup is section 6-125, an application for renewal of a short-term rental license shall be submitted between the 90 days and 30 days prior to the expiration of the existing license. The corrected renewal timeframe of October is already currently referenced in 6-129C. Also, we're requesting removal of section 6-125H in the last sentence of section 129C, which relates to the dates and timelines to submit applications that are no longer relevant. In section 6-129H, clarifying the properties that passed required fire inspections in November or December of the prior year may be issued a license earlier than January 1st. So the board is asked to consider a motion to approve with amendments, or to reject the ordinance.
Thank you. So there's no applicant other than the town, right? Okay. So first we can ask questions of Paula or the staff, planning staff. Right? Maybe I had a couple of items. One of them has to do with the proposed 6-125 paragraph E refers to section 6-122E, and that doesn't exist in our code. That 122, the E part should just be eliminated because it refers back to of principal residence definitions, but they're not delineated A, B, C, D. They're just all in that one.
I'm gonna just pull up your town, I'm not disagreeing, I'm just gonna pull up your town code really quick.
Yeah, I was gonna suggest a wording change on that paragraph E.
Trying to see what it's referring to.
It's the definitions, it's about being a principal residence. Whether somebody is a primary residence here in Chaffey County.
So which is
6-122.
It's not supposed to be 420, huh? So I don't know, I'm gonna pull up the code here real quick. Here we are. 6-122. Oh. There should be just no E.
Right.
Yeah, okay, sorry, Mayor,
Yeah.
now I understand.
But I think what I'd do is change the wording in paragraph E of 129, change it to residents of Chaffey County may apply for a license per address structure for a short-term rental which is not eligible as their primary residence as defined under 6-122 above. So I would add as their primary residence as defined right after eligible.
Just get rid of the E. And still refer to section 6-122.
Okay, so that's all right.
Does that work for you?
Yep.
Okay.
And then there's another one where there's just a word that's extra. It's on the previous, it's on 6-125, item C. It just has an extra word in it somewhere. It should be licenses may only be issued to owners of structures who also are one.
Oh, yeah.
Just kind of extra R in there.
Good.
Yep. Okay. That's my doing. I'll take responsibility for that.
It's been there for a while, I think.
Thanks.
So, are there comments, questions on these changes?
So for someone to change, are they changing because they've moved out of county? Why would they?
Well, there could be a couple of reasons. One would be they have it as their principal residence being in Chaffey County, but then they move out of Chaffey County. The other possibility, though, is that somebody owns a property that's not their principal residence, but they are Chaffey County residents. However, they put it into an LLC, you know, and then it becomes, it's owned by an entity. And our law here is treating that as an out-of-county ownership.
Okay.
Questions, comments?
I have a language question in paragraph A. It says the residency status of the applicant seeking to renew an existing STR license shall be determined as of the day of the renewal application. Does that mean the day it's approved or considered or submitted? Does that mean an extra word?
I would read that as the day the renewal application is filed with the clerk.
Okay, as long as it makes sense to you.
Yeah, I think it wouldn't hurt to basically say,
like submission or review.
It's filed with the clerk.
Okay, great. Maybe we can add that if we're
Yep.
already adding language changes.
I'm not sure which one you were speaking about.
Paragraph K,
Okay.
right above section 2.
Because that's when they're gonna basically say what their residency is, so.
So I'd like to open this to the public comment. Is there, yes, please approach the podium and give us your name and address.
Hi, my name is Karen Kelly. I see some familiar faces in the room, which is really nice. I own 623 Cedar, Unit D101. I purchased it back in March of 2022 by myself. I was really excited to buy a piece of property in Buena Vista, and I did it independently, saving up as a single woman, and it was a really big financial decision. I've been visiting Buena Vista since I was around 10 years old. My aunt has lived in the community for over 20 years. And when I made the decision to move up here, I started living with her. I rented a property from someone in town long-term, and then I decided to buy because I was essentially paying someone else's mortgage. And I could afford to put a down payment down in a house. But I made that financial decision with the understanding from my real estate agent that I would have the ability to apply for a short-term rental permit as a Chaffee County resident. And that if I ever needed to move out of the county for whatever reason, that I could switch my permit status from a primary residence, Chaffee County resident, to an out-of-county resident. And that I wouldn't be subject to the same terms and the same line as people who do not live in our community and were not members of this county. And I was surprised to hear that that legislation was changing because it puts me in a really tricky situation. I have a short-term rental license. I've never used it, but I applied for it because I wanted to hold on to it in case I ever needed to exercise that right. And I'm hitting this juncture in my life where my dad has dementia. My parents live in Massachusetts, and I might be called out of state. And if I'm called out of state, I'm no longer a Chaffee County resident. And I have to go to the back of the permitting line as a non-county resident and wait in line with 10 plus applicants. And I'm gonna quote the memo that was written by Lillian over in the short-term rental office. But she said, each year, only a small number of license holders choose not to renew, especially in the out-of-county or entity-owned category, as they likely know that it will be that much more difficult to get a license if they decide to reapply later. So if I do need to become an out-of-county resident and apply for that permit, I'm sitting at the back of the line with 10 other humans who don't live in this community and never have. And I'm unlikely to advance through that line because, as you just heard in that memo, most people who are out of county are choosing not to renew. It's a stream of income for them. It's not a house. It's not a home. It's not a community. And I know that's not true of everyone, but when you think about an investment property, that's what it is. And I'm kind of kicking myself because if I had known this, I think I would have changed some of my investment decisions. I might have been more hesitant to invest all of my money into this property. I definitely would have applied for the out-of-county permit when I bought my house back in March, and I would have had that out-of-county permit now, and I wouldn't be on a 10-person wait list. I was fortunate enough to talk to the people that live above me who bought their property at the same exact time. They have their out-of-county short-term rental license because that was their only option. But I didn't go that route because it's my primary residence and I'm a member of this community. And I think that in summary and conclusion, I know that we need to have a cap on short-term rentals. It protects our community. It protects the ability for individuals to rent and access long-term housing, which is a problem that many of my friends face here. But the way that this legislation, the way that this amendment is written, hurts county residents right now. It makes it much less flexible if you are already a property owner. You purchased your property with the understanding that, you know, like we used to have this legislation that gave you that flexibility and now that's going away. It's just really difficult. It puts me in a really tough situation financially. And the last thing that I'll say is, it also hits close to home because I'm headed down to Denver for a 3-month yoga teacher training. I feel that there is a gap in our community, and I'd really love to bring the level of practice that I used to have when I lived in Denver back up here. And I'm going for 200 hours of education. I'm renting out a place in Denver so that I can pursue this. And I posted my house for rent on Chaffey County Housing. It was not a short-term rental. I did not want to put it on Airbnb. I wanted to open it up to the community because we have a housing problem and see if anyone would be interested first. And when I posted it with the amount that I pay per month in my mortgage and my HOA, that does not cover taxes, that does not cover property improvements, I was met with a 35 comment long list of people who were shocked at the cost that it takes to live up here, the cost that it takes to own property. And without that short-term rental license, without that flexibility, if I do need to short-term rent it, that's the only way that I can afford to move out of the county if I need to. So it also, once again, it's really restrictive for individuals who are members of this community who have a short-term rental license and need that flexibility and purchase their properties prior to this legislation. So I would really implore this committee to think about alternatives that would get us to the same solution, where we still have some type of cap, but maybe there's some amnesty or a grace period for individuals that bought their home and did so with the understanding that this legislation that's being proposed was not what was in place when we made that investment. Thank you.
Yeah, I would say it'd be worth thinking about whether when you leave to go to Denver or you leave to go to Massachusetts, are you truly moving there or are you just away from here temporarily?
Well, temporarily, according to this amendment, is 1 year because the license renewal is after 1 year. So if I'm out of county for longer than 365 or like past the October renewal period, I will go to the back of that permitting line as an out of county permit. And
that'd be worth taking a look at. Because I'm not sure that you truly are changing your residence. Because your intention is to be here.
yeah, I think that that's a good point. But if we're going by letter of the law, the way that it's written, I would be changing my residence. Because I'm not spending the majority of my time here. I'm not a county resident. And I know that that's the intention of this. It's to try and limit the amount of short-term rentals. I see that the intention, or I feel that the intention of this policy is to try and, I would imagine that it's to try and encourage individuals who are short-term renting to be members of our community so that they're connected to the community. They're not just profiting off of, like people who come in for the summer. But I think that the way that it's worded, it is, once again, it's like hurting county residents who own their properties. I think there's different ways to explore it. Like maybe there's a board where you present your case, kind of like I'm doing right now. I'm giving you the facts of my personal situation, but that might be an approach. Maybe revisiting the allocation of short-term rental licenses, because the majority, the 9% of total residents, as I was reading this in the amendment, the 9%, 6% are allocated to out-of-county residents and only 3% are for in-county residents. So if the goal is to get people from this community to own property and be members of this community, that might be worth exploring. The cost of the licenses is the same for both groups, whether you are in community or out of community. So there's no incentive for, as an in-community member, I could have bought my short-term rental license as an out-of-county member and had more flexibility. At the time that I bought my property, there was no price difference between the two groups. There's like a few considerations or avenues that I think are worth exploring, but the way that this is written right now is really restrictive for county residents that have a short-term rental license.
Okay.
I mean, I can make a comment.
Yeah.
So I want to comment, first of all, like Colorado law has an interesting approach to determining what your residence is. And it really is your state of mind. So in general, like you're a resident, if you intend to be a resident, you can be gone there's no limit on the time period you can be gone to still be a resident in Colorado, as long as you don't establish residency somewhere else. And there are certain factors that the courts look to, but I think determining whether or not you're a resident or not of Buena Vista doesn't mean that if you go on for a year, you're not a resident. It could be if you register to vote somewhere else, or you get a license, or you actually tend to move somewhere else. It could mean that, but not necessarily. So I just want to be clear that it isn't just an automatic thing after a year. That was the first comment I want to make. The second comment I want to make, which I think I'm understanding your point, is that, you know, somebody is an out of county resident, someone's an in-county resident, you both get a license at the same time. The in-county resident then changes the residency. You go to the back of the line, whereas the out-of-county resident gets to maintain their license the whole time. And I think what you're saying is that doesn't really seem fair. Why would the out-of-county resident get to keep their license? They're still out of county, and why would I lose mine when I was actually given the preferential license for being in county? Why would I lose it and they don't? Because I go out of county. So I see the point. And I guess it's a policy question. And so I hadn't crossed my mind until you mentioned it. I don't know if staff had thought about that. I just think it's something that's worth considering. You know, and even an out of county resident who got their license after you could be ahead of you.
Yeah.
If you were an in-county resident and then change your status to the status of somebody who already has a license. So I do see why that could be considered to be unfair. It's not illegal. It's just something to be considered when you're thinking about whether this is a good policy or not. And I just want to make sure that you all understood the way I understood it. And I sort of see your point. So.
Thank you.
So I think from staff's perspective is gray areas are not where we want to be. We want kind of clear direction on how we handle certain situations. With this, it is not taking what was legislation and changing it. It was a lack of legislation. So there was no clear direction in the existing policy to say what happens if somebody's in county and then moves out of county. And so this is an attempt to clarify that. I see where you're going with the preferential as far as in county, or somebody gets an out of county license and somebody got in county and they moved out. The thing is, going forward, and it was probably the case in March, to be honest, going forward, that out of county license is not available. And so that out of county is not available. Somebody comes in, gets their driver's license changed, gets their voter registration changed, gets their in-town short-term rental license, and then moves away and has their short-term rental license. So it's really just a matter of looking for you guys to clarify and what is the direction so that we have clear direction when they come in to town hall to say this is the situation. It's really just a matter of getting rid of the gray as much as possible for staff so that we don't have to be the ones interpreting, that we don't have to determine if her story is appropriate or the other guy's story is more appropriate or anything like that, just clear direction on the preferred route. And so the majority of this was cleanup. There's some language that was no longer relevant when these in-county residency requirements were put into place. We gave that grace period to say if you were already under construction, that's gone away, so we don't need to deal with that anymore. The other one was some of the renewal periods were contradicting, so we wanted to clarify that. But the big thing, of course, that has been highlighted is what is the stance in the board's direction on if somebody came in, there's no more out of county licenses, at least in our current capacity as far as caps. So there is no option for an out of county resident to get a license. Somebody comes in and gets an in-county license and then moves out of town. Do they automatically get an out-of-county license even if there's none available? Do they move to the front of the line or do they move to the back of the line? So we're really just looking for clear direction on that because it is difficult from a staff perspective to deal with those individuals coming in. The intent is there and I think she's got good intent, but there are legitimate times where it doesn't feel like those individuals are following the intent, staff in a hard position. And so we just were looking on clarification on that side.
And do you know how, like, what's the rate of in-county residents that apply for an out-of-county short-term rental license?
They can't. It goes by where you live, your ownership. It's like you had mentioned earlier that you would have applied for an out-of-county permit. You couldn't have been able to because you reside in Chaffey County.
So I was bucketed into that. I had to be
Yes.
bucketed into that.
It goes by the ownership of.
The next public comment.
And that's really interesting that I wouldn't have even had the option because the price of the short-term rental licenses are equal across both groups. But as an out-of-county resident, you're a lot less restricted in what you can and cannot do because you can live wherever for the same price as an in-county resident. But my question to Brian was more, let me rephrase. It was, how often do you see somebody come in who has an in-county short-term rental license asking to migrate that existing license?
There's been only a couple situations, and so that has spurred the desire to get clarification on it. Because the prior ones that did come in, there was still capacity where there was room for an out-of-county license available. So it slid across, but identifying that as something that wasn't clearly identified in the code, we said, this is something we didn't really think about the initial pass. So it's something we need to get clarified in the code so we have clear direction.
Yeah, so let's move on tonight.
Yep.
And then, we'll put some more thought into this.
Thank you.
So are there other public comments? Nothing?
There's
Okay.
some online.
Okay, thank you.
There's two folks.
Okay, Robert O'Donnell,
Yes, this is Robert O'Donnell.
you're live.
I'm a short-term permit holder and a resident of Chaffey County and a resident of Buena Vista now. And I did have a similar concern to what the young lady mentioned. We bought the house here in town with intention of being here for a long time. My mother's owned a place up here for 25 years. She is getting older and beginning to suffer from dementia and may eventually have some breathing issues that might force her to move out of the county. And so our concern is if we end up needing to leave the county as well, our assumption, or maybe it was our misunderstanding, was that our point in line was established when we got our permit, not when we try to change from county to out of county. And so that's a concern that we have now is all of a sudden we bought our home in March of April of 23. And so now it sounds like if we ever have an issue coming up where we have to move out of county, that we would go to the back of the line versus a lot of other people who may have come in after us and having been, longtime citizens of the city at whatever point, hopefully in the future, we do end up moving away. So I think that would be a good point of clarification, just like the other young lady mentioned, that if you could consider when the original license was established as far as the queue in place, instead of forcing your longtime residents, longtime taxpayers to all of a sudden have to go to the back of the line when they have that life event happens that requires them to move out of county and can no longer be primary residents here in Chaffey County.
Okay, so that'll be another one we'll think about. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, do we have anyone else?
Everybody's got their hand raised.
Okay, all right, so we definitely have some work to do on that. Would it be better to pass what we have identified so far and then get back to this question? Recognizing that this isn't perfect, but it's going to take some time to work out any changes in it.
I think that's sort of a policy call for the board to make, or staff to weigh in on it.
I guess
We discuss it a little bit.
Yeah, I'm wondering how the rest of the board feels about just the specific question of existing in-town permits moving to the front of the line for out-of-town permits. I think I'm generally okay with that, given that it falls into the category of out-of-town permits. So I would be okay with that, but
I would agree with the stipulation that they had owned their property for a set amount of time.
yeah,
To
agreed.
help deter some of those intentions.
That it was your primary residence for at least X amount of
years,
or
whatever those
something,
years
yeah,
may be.
yeah.
And I believe the intention behind the original was to not only have the community of short-term, but also the fact of, tax collections, money that's spent.
Keep the economic benefit here.
Right, direct economic.
You don't want folks to like move here.
Right,
Or
and
change their primary residence.
that's exactly it, because Colorado does have unique residency laws where you could come here, change your license, change your voter registration, then go live wherever you want and say, oh, but I live here. So I feel like I would agree that the top of the line, sure, with the stipulation that they had lived in said residence or,
But it's a primary residence for X amount of time.
Yeah.
What do you think? Finish discussing, but I like where it's going.
I think there'll be a fairness component to those other people who've been in line. Someone else could stand here and say, I've been in line for 2 years. And you guys gave this preference for someone in town to go to the head of the line. People could leverage that and say, you know what, I'm just gonna create an LLC. And I'll go to the head of the line.
No, because it includes entities as well.
Yeah, if you switch to
out of
out
county
of
and
county,
entities.
I'm saying, it's like you're in town and I get preference. I'm just gonna create an LLC. I'll stay here. I'll shift over to the other category. I'll get to the head of the line. And the people who've been waiting in that line will scream that it's unfair because now I would in good faith thought there's 10, there's 9, there's 8 left. And so you'd have just as many people on the other side saying, hey, that's not fair because you have another angle to work here. So I think Brian's point is that there needs to be some clarity, number one. Number two, the intent, I think, of the original framework was to give preference to local owners so that the economic benefit would stay local. And when people leave and establish residency somewhere else, that economic benefit is not staying here. So I think the intent was to do that. Brian's point is well made. You guys need clarity because this will not be the first time this question has come up.
Yeah, I think that's a good point that on either side, there's gonna be a perception of unfairness and, I was on the board when we made this policy and I think, we have to make sure we do support the people that live here and that there's a lot of, if you look at every little circumstance and things, then you get bogged down and then there's no clarity for staff, which staff need this clarity on this specific issue. So, I don't feel strongly that it should be the person to go to the front of the line, given your explanation, and then you hear the other explanation, then it seems like it should. So I think.
I don't feel strongly.
Yeah, I feel like I think this is a really good clarity in this specific thing.
You have people in each line arguing that it's unfair.
I mean, I think in the end, the intentionality is that if you leave, we don't want to preference investment properties over workforce housing or people who live here. And if you have to sell your home, that is a bummer. And that is the intention, right? Is to like create more housing stock for people who live here.
Yeah.
You can still keep it and in long-term rental, I know that's not preferable, but if that encourages more housing stock available for residents.
And the intention was by supporting county the money is going into the county.
Yeah.
So if you're out of county and the money is going out of county, then it's not thing.
Yeah.
We also, it's hard to keep track of people, if they live here for whatever reason, whether it's, to take care of an aged relative or to go to college or anything, it's just hard to keep track of them.
Right.
Well, and I was genuinely surprised to hear that people in town have applied for out-of-town permits for this reason, which is a different thing to be concerned about, but.
Excuse me, one point of clarification, they cannot do that. When they submit the application for short-term rental, they don't choose if it's an in-county or out-of-county. It goes by the property ownership, and that is verified on Chaffey County Assessor's website. Plus, we have a copy of the driver's license, and we've also looked up voter registration. The applicant doesn't get to choose what bucket they're in.
Okay, thank you.
So the property owner on the county assessor's website is listed as a county resident. Okay, so you're not asking them, do you feel like identifying as a town resident?
No.
You're looking at the county tax record and saying, where is that property license? Is it to an individual or an LLC, and what LLC goes in this bucket, individual, if you're out of county, this bucket, if you're in county, this bucket.
Right.
So there's no gray area in that.
No gray area.
To move this forward, I'm comfortable with the language as written, given the intentions of the board. If we want to revisit this conversation and talk about line status, I'd be happy to talk about that before the end of the year, if that feels important to the board.
Man, I'm with you. I'm comfortable with the way it's written, with the idea that, pretty much anything that's in our code, someone can petition for some relief or a grievance or a variance. And so in an extenuating circumstance, we could always hear one, but I don't think that would be very often. But I'm comfortable with, it seems to give clarity, and it seems to provide some fairness to the queue on both sides of it, in both categories.
Just to clarify, there's no variance option for this kind of.
Thank you.
Yeah. Variances for use,
like
land use code, structural issues.
So there'd be no avenue for someone to plead a hardship case and say, "Oh, make an excuse for me."
No.
So at what point do they lose their in-town license though? Is it when it comes up for renewal?
They have to do their renewal and things, and then if and each time we do a renewal, we verify, go back out to the assessor's website and see what the ownership is and things, and that's where we've seen where people have quit claiming the property or they've moved out and things, so it's re-verified at that time. So we do that annually.
That's fair.
And that's where we find, people have shifted categories, and when that has happened in the past, there was always enough out-of-county licenses still available. Where we've gotten to our challenge is now maxed out because of the caps that are set. We will reevaluate our housing counts at the end of August and things. And so that's going to bump up a few more licenses being available in that category, but not to the extent probably to cover the 10 that's on the waiting list.
Yeah. And that's another point that I was going to make, is that there is a lot of housing coming online in the next few years. So it's not, granted, it's going to get capped out, regardless.
But this is not a reversal. If there was an understood preference, that's different, but this is not a reversal. This is just clarification to provide clarity to a situation we now have. If there was some understanding that once you had one, you had preference, that is an incorrect understanding.
That is correct.
All right. So, Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve ordinance number 18 as amended, because we talked about those few spelling and grammatical errors and the letter E.
Okay.
Right.
I will second.
Okay, so we have Rowe and Swisher. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, that motion passes. Thank you all. Good discussion. Okay, so now, Jack, we are at the airport. So I think this is all for you, right? Item number F, business item F.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye.
Good night.
Thank you.
Jack?
Okay, yes, Mayor, trustees. So we're asking the Board of Trustees to approve, deny, or resolution number 60, which is the memo starts on page 260, the resolution 262, and then the FAA grant agreement. That's what we're asking the Board of Trustees to approve on 263. So this FAA grant agreement is basically from the FAA saying that the town will honor its rules, regulations as written in the agreement and match have sufficient funds to match the FAA grant. The FAA grant, while the whole project was estimated at $189,627. So FAA is willing to pay 90% of that, which will end up being $170,664. The town will be obligated, if we agree to this grant, to follow their regulations, rules, make sure we build it in accordance, and also match with $9,482. Having said that, at the beginning of the year, we knew this project was coming, so we did approve this at the budget meeting at the beginning of the year for this project. Also, back in May 28th, we had a very similar resolution with the CDOT version of this. So CDOT is matching 5%. We already agreed to that we will follow CDOT's regulations and match that. So CDOT will be kicking in a 5% of $9,400 as well. So all this is just tidying up this final piece of the paper because, you know, the FAA sort of tends to run a little bit slower than the state. To say the project is a go, it's been approved by both FAA, CDOT, and we did approve it with the town. And now we're just saying we'll honor the cost and carry on. This is just the design phase. Next year, we'll revisit all this again, the very same project, but we'll be in the construction phase. So we're just asking for your approval.
Does anyone have questions for Mr. Wiles? Is there a motion in regard to this?
I do have one question, sorry. So for next year, what needs to be plugged into budget is our 5% share of construction.
It'll be construction, which will be more than this. Once we Dibble will get with us and they'll say, okay, the actual construction phase of that, which has actually been planned out in our long-term CIP. And that, so 5% on that, again, if we choose to follow through with the construction.
Yeah, any ballpark idea of what the construction cost is gonna be?
I could look up my CIP, but it's
engineering 10% of the construction cost, so $1 million project.
This won't be quite $1 million at the construction phase. This is all getting set up. We're gonna do the apron and then eventually the fuel island. That's where the big money will come, and we haven't crossed that bridge, but this will probably be a 500,000-ish project with a 5% match on the town when that comes through. We'll have the figures of that for sure. As a matter of fact, I could probably pull that up.
That's okay.
Pretty close to what we're budgeting for on that one. And we've got a meeting with Philip tomorrow. We're already starting the budget process. That'll be part of our numbers that we bring up very shortly, you know, when we were asking for money for 2025.
Thanks.
Okay, is there a motion or any further questions?
Make a motion to approve resolution number 6, series 2024.
Well, second.
Okay, we've got Lucrezi and Height.
Give it to Swisher.
Oh, Swisher. Swisher, back row. Swisher. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, the motion passes.
I'm fine. It's fine, everything's fine.
Everything's fine.
It's getting a little warm over there.
Yeah. It's okay.
Okay, been there, done that. Okay, so we're at trustee staff interactions. Do we want to begin with talking with the Ecksteins? Or do we need to do that separately?
Do you?
About the fee request?
You've been sitting there patiently. Yeah.
Yeah,
that's right.
I'd like to start with that.
Okay. Okay. Would one of you like to refresh us on your issue?
Yeah. I'll spare you the extensive version and kind of cut it shorter if I can. Our efforts to try to see highway commercial workforce living in RVs dates back far. Our first interaction 3 years ago, and granted, those were minimal light interactions on mybv.com or things of that nature. As it moved forward, let's say November off the top of my head, would make 2 years of when we started to have interactions with planning, things would move forward. From the beginning, there was goodwill to see this happen, and we were moving forward. It stalled out for a number of reasons. It came back, it went in different directions. In short, we took it upon ourselves and made the decision to engage in the same practice before it was officially codified. We found ourselves in a position where we're like, God, we're trying. And we had an applicant who was looking to move to work at our tasting room on East Main Street, conditionally on he had somewhere to park his RV. I don't know if you have anything to add. I would.
No, you.
Okay, I would also say, during this process, we received a citation, and to which I responded, I was like, I know, we're trying, like we're in the process of it. Ultimately, the response from code enforcement was like, well, there's a form you can fill out for 21 days of use. I did that. At the time, our employee wasn't even living there, but I was like, I guess I'll fill it out. I don't really have any other direction, so I'll do that, and maybe we can hustle this along. Ultimately, then I was contacted again and said, hey, I asked you to remove this, and even though it might be happening elsewhere in town, I see you doing it because we're right next to you. We can't have this. And I said, leniency, please. Like, we're in the middle of the process. Like, I wish this happened 2 years ago, but we're still working through it. It's one employee. That's the gist of it. I am fully aware that we conducted this matter in a non-code compliant way, but while our hand wasn't forced, we felt like we had to make a decision that was in the best interest of our company. Without, for whatever it's worth, without a food component to our tasting room, we're dead in the water. Without employees in our kitchen, we've found to be a massive struggle. We don't have a kitchen. It's just, it's so predicated on an insanely busy 2 months of the year. So we took that upon ourselves.
Lenny, the code enforcement violation, was it for a health and human safety issue or primarily just for have a non-allowed use?
Storage of short-term, long-term campers, I think it's like 8-44.
No, I know what it is. I know what it says. I didn't know if it was like, just because you have the RV and you're not supposed to, or because somebody staying in the RV caused a nuisance. It sounds like it's.
No nuisance.
Okay, but I think, what were your total fines? You said 1,500 that you're looking at?
At minimum 1,500 if our compliance is such that within 21 days, I believe of the email I received today, but it could be slightly later. Within 21 days, they'll give me a second opportunity to fill out a permit for living in an RV, which seems to be drafted for residential purposes. If we do that, then immediately move the RV from site, our fine would be $1,500. If we do not comply with that, it would be the full fine of $2,650. Furthermore, even if we do remove it and get the $1,500 fine, there's the there's a statement of a 6-month probationary period where whether this ordinance passes or not, we will not be able to engage in it yet.
I didn't know that.
I don't know that it's my place to call it heavy-handed, but I'm gonna say it is. And furthermore, like, what are we doing here? Like, we've got so much stuff to do. Like, where does this money go? Like, what are we doing? Like, it wasn't like we were flying down East Main Street doing 50 miles an hour. We're just trying to retain an employee when there's nowhere else for them to live. And we're trying to do it in the right manner. We've been trying to get this ordinance passed.
I think it's just here we're up again. I don't know if that answered, but so there's the fine. I think the biggest concern is we're like, oh, we don't want to evict our employees. And I'll tell you, it's like we have an employee house that the campers work. They work great. People have been living on that property since 2011.
Before our ownership.
But of course, like the police move in, it's like a slap in the face to them. They're like right next door. I mean, it feels a little like gentrification, but it's like, all right, now it's in your face. We're just trying to it works so well. Like, I mean, I just don't want to have to evict. I mean, the 1,500 is just like, it's just hard. It's like we paid $1,000 for the rezone, $300 for like shipping containers. It's like thousands of dollars in fees. And I'm like, why are we even doing this? It's just, we do want to be safe. We're doing this because we care about our employees. Believe it or not, it's safer than a lot of other places they've lived. I've had women move in there in weird situations, so I just want help, I guess. I don't know if you guys can drop the charges, but it'd be.
I would add also, there was sentiment, for whatever it's worth, from the public. We had a gentleman who came to speak out against at a planning and zoning hearing about the rezone initiative, but said, by the way, I do support their camping and get rid of this citation. This is crazy. It was the day we got issued citation. Furthermore, at our last planning and zoning hearing, the chair of planning and zoning said, can we do anything about getting rid of this citation? And I believe the answer was like, not really from this angle. So I'm coming to you tonight to say like, this, you know, it would be awesome if this could go away. We could just go about our business and not be.
Work towards compliance. So we do want to be compliant. I guess we're kind of putting ourselves in such harm's way. We spend so much time on this, and I know town staff does too. We just don't want to evict our employees.
I'm just confused about what you're actually asking for. Is it just to drop the citation? Okay.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. I appreciate it.
Well, I know our town staff doesn't appreciate, you just deciding that, well, yeah, we think the law should be this, so therefore we're
Well,
gonna.
it's been like that since 2011.
Act like it is.
Yeah.
Pardon me.
We had to evict someone from when we acquired it. It's not a new thing. It's been happening all over town. When I was asked by our prosecutor who else is engaging in it, I didn't want to have to start pointing fingers, but I know where it's happening in town at other businesses.
I know, it's like we're stuck between, excuse me, Mayor, for interrupting it, we're so stuck. I mean, we're just so stuck and we're trying, we started this when TriView started. You guys have annexed in 300 acres of property and we're still like getting shit on, and it's just like, I just want help. If you guys, it's hard. So
do we have is it calendared to bring back the highway commercial camping allowance?
27th.
Of August?
Correct.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay. I guess my recommendation would be to drop the citation, at least until that conversation, so we can make a decision one way or the other about, because it is in flux and it's so close.
So for clarification, the next court date is August 28th. And perhaps a discussion at the 27th meeting will help clarify. With that, I just don't know necessarily, Jeff.
Yeah, I'm gonna jump in.
Can we even take action? This is not an agenda item?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things here. Yeah, first of all, like, it's not an agendized item. You basically you can't take action on it, agendized, unless it's sort of more administrative type matter. So for first issue, I want to acknowledge everything they said. I hear everything you're saying. Sounds super frustrating. Understand all that. I think the mayor sort of made sort of the bottom line point is that city council, town board has certain authority. Their authority is to pass laws, to basically, give direction to staff about what their priorities are, but they don't have authority to interfere with the judicial process.
Okay.
They don't have authority to basically tell somebody to drop the charges. That's basically it's not permitted.
Does anyone on staff have that authority?
Prosecutor.
The prosecutor alone?
Yeah.
I apologize for, it's just been.
No, it's one of these things where I hear everything you're saying is expressing severe frustration. I totally hear it. I wish I could tell you there's an easy solution here. And basically, once it goes, to the judicial system, even though it's municipal court, it's still a judicial system. It's covered by Colorado law. Yeah, town board, can't be telling prosecutor what they can and can't prosecute, how to drop charges, that kind of thing. It's just not legal.
There's no path forward to this other than take what's given.
You'd have to have an attorney advise you about how you can challenge it, number one.
I tried that.
$1,000.
Yeah, right, that's another expense for you there, right? And then the other deal is talk to the prosecutor,
It's very.
I can't speak for her, what her reasoning is or the court's reasoning. Unfortunately, I don't get involved in that directly, so.
Well, with that then, we have no course other than to go forward, but what I would offer up is consider the horizon or length of leash that's being granted to code enforcement. I think it's excessive and unnecessary and capricious. And I don't know why others aren't being singled out. We're gonna look for a record of other code violations being cited, and we expect to not find many others in the same category. So, take it for what it's worth, but it's unfortunate.
And I also comment on that, I've been doing this job for way too long, unfortunately, and I hear what you say a lot, and I totally understand. Why are they not getting charged and I'm getting charged? I feel like I'm being singled out. And my advice to the staff when this is happening is to make sure that you apply the law evenly to everybody in the same situation. And so
They should.
that's what should be happening.
I think and thank you guys for this conversation. It's hard. We've been doing it since 2011. And it's like, well, what happened? Was it like I spoke up about camping in the newspaper? Because it happened right after that. Like, it's hard when it's like, are we being singled out? When it's been like, it's happened for 13 years. We already start this process and that's when the town, it's hard. It's a very hard thing, especially when it's like, we're trying to do right by this community. I don't know, we're just talking circles. Thanks, sorry, I get frustrated. I mean, I wish it wasn't.
I'll add one more thing to that is if I ever hear of anybody retaliating against anybody using code enforcement as a town attorney, I definitely have a conversation about that. And I have not heard that, but
No, we haven't.
definitely should be happening.
Yeah, it does feel like retribution, to be honest, but you can't prove that. So it's what it is.
I mean, it's hard when it's right next to the police station, but.
With cameras.
Yeah. But I mean, even the cameras, you're like, well, can you use cameras to like survey us? I mean, we know it's at,
But it's hard when we were the forklift, when they needed things unloaded to build a police station, or the space that they could store their stuff, or ask us to move it.
I mean, they probably had like a CO for 3 months, but that's when the citation started. Can that be considered selective? I don't know. That's the things that it's like, I appreciate you guys hearing us. It's just like, you guys, the police station moves in, we're super supportive of it. We help them build it. Unfettered access, and it's like right after. It's like, that's when the citations start. And it's just hard. You're like, is it okay? Like, is it selective if they're right next door to us and they have cameras? Like, is that selective? I don't know. I mean, that's fine. We'll just kick her out.
I think all we can say at this point is that it sounds like the only possible route for you right now is to meet with the prosecutor.
We did. She gave us very little.
Yeah,
recourse.
we can't even use the
You can
6
pay
months.
a slightly reduced
I
fine,
know
or you
that.
can pay the whole fine.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
6 months.
in 6
I
months,
just
we
learned
can't
that.
move forward with this
So
ordinance.
it doesn't, we just got this email right away.
Maybe refund their $1,000 rezoning application fee.
You have certain authority what to do with your budget and your money. So that's a different issue.
That'd be nice to consider.
Thank you for understanding the frustration that we're up against. And thank you for your time with helping and stuff. I wish it could be different. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you. Thanks for your patience. Okay. I'll just say that the governor was in town the other day. That was really nice. You get almost no notice of these things, and I think that might be a security issue, that they don't want to put out a public statement that the governor is going to be one place or another. The reason he was here was that the farm has allocated 48 beds in two 5-plexes to the prison, for the prison workers. So they will be able to rent individual beds for $595 a month. And they have the full kitchen and 1.5 bathrooms. There'll be 3 or 4 prison workers in each of those homes. So it'll be really great for them because they'll have a 5-minute commute rather than an 1.5 hours, like down to the San Luis Valley. And they'll have a community of fellow workers. Plus they'll be closer to town and, can integrate with the town, and should be a good thing.
So they'd be away from their families.
Right now they are, because, they've hired a bunch of people from, I think, Puerto Rico, and I spoke with a man the other day from Cameroon, West Africa. And I asked him about his family. He gets to see his family about every 2 years. Pretty grim existence.
Still not an ideal situation.
Yeah, but at least,
They will
they're-
$5 of progress.
They live here, they buy gas and groceries and t-shirts here.
Right, yeah.
So there's an economic.
And eventually, hopefully, they can bring their families.
There's an economic component of them living here too.
Okay, Devin.
I'm good.
Mika.
Thank you for scheduling the highway commercial camping. Brian and I are also chatting about some busing issues that have come up in the community. The Chamber of Commerce reached out and wants help advocating for a better bus line, maybe reserved seating. on the way to Denver, given that we're at the end of the line and people are having a hard time actually getting a seat, even if they bought a ticket. So Brian and I are talking about that and hopefully helping the chamber advocate. I would like to advocate for that type of service here in terms of transportation. So we can talk more about that as it comes up. That's all.
Okay. Cindy?
Oh, shoot, my brain went blank. The email that we got from Janet Steiner.
Oh, yeah.
The noise complaint.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
and that is she complaining about the legacy stage?
I think so.
Yeah.
During
And
gold rush days, I guess.
Yes. Yeah.
I wondered if that legacy stage, which I'm in favor of, would end up being a contention with the people that live close to it. Because it is an invasion of their sound noise, and not everything that comes from the legacy stage is gonna be what they want to hear. I don't know how much of a conflict it will be in the future. I might think I could overlook Gold Rush days, but is there a sound level ordinance that the legacy stage can't surpass? Can they be as loud as they absolutely want, or is there an ordinance that makes them fall into a category?
Yeah, Let us speak to this one, Cindy. I was there on Saturday when Officer Schoonover came over because of the noise complaint. Because I'm part of BVEC, which put on the concert this weekend and several throughout the season. The way our code is written right now, there isn't a specific number. Special event permits are given for amplified sound at the park. So they were all permitted events. My understanding is that it has not been only the big festivals, but I believe that Thursday nights may have also had some of the same complaints. It is something that I think is an important conversation to have. Right, that stage was built for everybody. Obviously, I'm in favor of it. But you're right, not everybody's gonna love what's on there. I think it's definitely a conversation to continue. I personally am trying to connect back to her on a few different levels to make sure that she knows that she's being heard, is really important to me for sure. Because it is something that's for our community as a whole. So I don't know if I answered all of your question, did I?
There's some ordinance.
Decibel levels.
Oh,
You do have a code provision with limits, but an exception is special events permitted by the town.
right, right. So that there are decibel levels for noise in code, yes, but because it's permitted special events, it's outside of that.
Some of it was very loud the other day. When Blue Recluse was on.
They were very loud.
It was
so-
super loud.
And I will say, on Saturday, we heard that there was a complaint. So on Sunday, we adjusted some speakers and we dropped the sound a little bit. So I'd love to get her feedback as if that helped. So really just kind of brainstorming with Brian and Grant and figuring out how we can address those concerns, because I absolutely understand him having gone home sick on Saturday, having some work being done in the basement with their speaker going way loud. I couldn't take a nap, and that was really inconvenient and led to an extra level of sympathy for those situations. I had the luxury to go downstairs and say, hey, can you turn it down? But she didn't have that luxury. So I want her to know that, the event organizers, that's something that we do care about from that level of it. So
is there a limit to the number of special permits you have in a year?
So that's a good question. I know from rec, they have like blocked out dates at the end of the month, but do we have a limit on special event permits that we give out in a year that allow amplified sound?
Not overall.
Okay.
Definitely not. Yeah, we have those kind of town weekends, if you will, once a month at the end of the month. As far as, I don't think there's a cap in general, like a maximum special events. And I also don't think there's a cap for individual organizers to have a cap.
There's timing on our special event permit. We're not allowed to have amplified sound past 10 o'clock.
Yeah, and so part of the grant has responded to the individual to provide some baseline information, saying, yeah, it's a permitted event. The one, that are happening now, but those comments can be taken into consideration for future applications, going forward. And then, Maggie, Grant and I have a meeting to discuss and just evaluate what potential options are, whether it's a decibel level, and if it is a decibel level, that here's the limit that we want to be, and how do we evaluate who controls that rather than having to call the cops.
Right, right.
So,
I mean, you said.
yeah, we're wanting to have those conversations, continue reaching out to her and address their concerns.
That's good because it's something new that was brought to town for the community, but it's affecting the property owners that have lived in the community for years. And maybe that wasn't the ideal location for it, but there's gotta be a compromise. There's gotta be a compromise.
Yeah, and it's not, you're not doing it 200 nights a year or anything like that. It's
Yeah, I mean,
10 or
in the
12
legacy
maybe.
stage, there's Thursday night concerts from late July, early-ish July until end of August. Yeah, and then BVEC, we've got 7 days, including 2 days of Gold Rush. So we'll have 7 events. And then I know that there was an event at the park a couple of weeks ago because I could hear it and I knew it wasn't one of mine and it wasn't a Thursday. But I don't know if there have been a ton outside of, the town weekends. I don't know.
Yeah.
Good question.
And
I'm sure Shane with it.
part of it will be that she has, that all people have to compromise first.
Exactly. That's exactly. We'll all find a solution together.
Okay. I mean, I think there is a possibility if you can foster some direct communication between the person who's complaining and the person who is responsible, because you said oftentimes there can be a simple solution just by listening to someone say, yeah, they're done. This is going to be done at 4 o'clock, and the person listened to me. That's great. You mentioned also there's a chance maybe we can point the speaker a titch to, so I think trying to create a heavy-handed rule that would affect everything would be a last resort. The first resort is try to figure out a line of communication between the person who complains with the person who's responsible.
Yeah.
They're going to find perhaps the person who's responsible is really, really nice.
I hope so.
No, and just saying, I hear you, like, you don't need to get to the hammer level.
Right.
Until the very, very end. So in the beginning, and you offered that, right? Just
100%.
find a way to.
From the first visit with Officer Schoonover, who typically works Saturday days, so I usually get to see her. It's great. Our BVAC's first response is always, how can we help? We want to be here to help with that. And as a trustee, I feel like that's also my gut reaction is, okay, we're here to listen, right? So I was glad that she reached out. It sounds like I think everybody got an email, and yeah, I'll definitely keep you posted on the conversation.
It's a small town. If the call to the code enforcement would say, take your call, I know just who you need to talk to. Hang on. And foster a connection, and then just listen and see if there's anything to tweak. And I think under many circumstances, you'd find that work.
Yeah, that's the hope. Does that talk about it and figure it out? Yeah.
Thank you.
For sure.
Andrew, what else do you have?
That's it.
Okay, Gina.
So you got Mustang, so that's good. So I was thinking that one and the noise. And then, I wanted to call out, I saw the new on the corner of 306 and 24 up on the light posts, the little black boxes. I think it's supposed to, every time I've gone through, they haven't been lit up, but it tells you, no turn and something more to help with people coming through. So I think it's a CDOT thing, honestly, right? So, because so many people turn there and there could be, we've had a lot of issues about people almost getting hit. So now there's that box up there that tells you of turning, things like that. I haven't sat there long enough to watch it turn a bunch, but I was like, oh, look, a new addition. So hopefully that's helpful. On the corner of 306 and 24, the main intersection.
Okay.
Brian, you could probably address
What I've determined, because I cross that every day, is the only time that box lights up is if a person presses the button to cross. And that way, if I'm turning right and somebody's crossing, there's that big, X saying no right turn. So it's not on all the time, only when somebody activates the box to cross is what I've seen.
As a pedestrian, I've seen it because I was like, oh, hey, That's great. Are they gonna put them on the other sides? Because that would be really, because it's the right turns from the highways that are the scary people, but it's a start and I'm grateful for it.
Yeah. So that's the only thing they really got, but I'm glad they did it. I think CDOT did that. I don't think that had anything to do with, right? So I don't know how we get more of this. But I'm glad I was like, hey, it's something. Yeah. Anyhow.
All right. Maggie, what else do you have?
I'd just like to see more of those. They were really nice to see it. It was awesome. CDOT could put them on the other two corners. Super. But no, Cindy hit the nail on the head earlier. Was really the concern of noise and being cooperative. And it was a successful gold rush. So thanks for all of you that were able to come out and enjoy. We did lettuce games for the first time because we're the head lettuce capital, or we were the head lettuce capital of the world. So be on the lookout next year. They should be much improved. So yeah.
Jack.
Just two things. Just want to answer your question. We did project CIP out to, great, I think, 2031, but in 25, the actual construction phase, we've estimated 622,000 for that apron stuff. That does not include the fuel farm. That's going to be very much predicated on grants and everything, which will be another 1.2 million. What we're just approved for the design phase was the apron stuff, which construction is 622,000.
And we're 5% of that.
We'll have to commit to 5% of that.
It's like 30,000.
Right. So the other thing I got Thursday, just coming Thursday, 11 to 2, we do have our airport open house barbecue of hot dogs, hamburgers. So all are invited, even you, Jeff, if you can make it. We always love lawyers.
Somebody needs to be on the runway.
Yeah, so we're gonna have that, and we'll have some planes there. We have a local fella that has a warbird, so they'll be out flying around. So come on out and have some Army helicopters are gonna be there.
So there will be.
Yeah. So, and just tell everybody can see, we purposely do word of mouth because we announce it, we'll just have way too many that we can. But word of mouth, we usually end up with, a couple hundred people, which is just perfect. So
It starts at 11. I can't show up.
Yeah. You can show up, but it's just, we're just gonna have the food stuff will be, we'll start barbecuing and yeah, you can show up anytime.
Jack, y'all did a great job with the intergovernmental meeting.
Yes.
Oh, thank you.
That was great.
It was a really neat place to have it.
All right.
Paula?
The only thing I have is to let you know, given everything in the office with Lillian leaving and things, Brian has still said, yes, Paula, you're going on vacation. I think he thinks I really need it. And I do. So at the next board meeting, please be gentle to the person who is taking the minutes.
Brian?
Brian, thank you, Brian.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah.
Not my favorite thing, but.
We'll have a very short agenda.
You're right, Cindy. I probably won't be like tonight.
Have a good vacation.
Have a great
Thank
Yeah,
Yes,
good for
you
you.
deserve it.
You deserve it.
I'll probably be working some remotely. No, want to pack it? But I'm sure Brian can do that too, but we're a team, we're kind of.
That's right.
Brian, got anything to?
One thing I did want to touch base on, Maggie reached out and Libby and I discussed, and Mika was involved too. There's a little bit of confusion, just clarification. We've got two parallel items going on between the highway commercial camping and then the rezoning of 105 Barnwood. They're two separate items. They are similar and they are running parallel paths, but they are separate. 105 Barnwood is a quasi judicial process that you need to identify or keep in mind not to discuss, and only have that conversation during the public hearings and the public meeting. Whereas the highway commercial is changed to the UDC, which is legislative. You are allowed to have conversations with individuals, with groups amongst yourself, not more than 3, but I just wanted to make sure that was clear, that those are two separate items, and one you should not be talking about, and the other one you can if desired. So, right, Jeff?
That's exactly right. Yeah.
So we can talk about camping, we cannot talk about
Rezoning.
the rezoning. God,
General legislation that affects areas, no problem. Specific applications for a piece of property, quasi judicial, wait till the meeting. Yep.
I was super helpful.
Thank you.
That's all I had except for, Zoom is good, but in person's nice every once in a while.
Oh, I got a little filter with Zoom, it's kind of. Yeah, no, thanks for having me. I was feeling like, back in the good old days, I would come up here
Every time.
twice a month. I think for at least a decade I did that. In my little Honda CRV, blizzards and all. But it's nice to be able to just hop on in my house and, be done and be home, but it's also helpful, I think, to meet you all in person. So always happy to come up here. And I'm trying to get my wife to come up at some point. She's off on a business trip, but try and make it an overnighter, so.
Yeah, nice hotel.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, nobody believes I actually have a wife.
She loves that.
She works, that's the way she wants it. If I saw butterflies in your room. Yeah, well, it's nice to meet the new trustees.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, I'm happy to come up anytime you want, just let me know, so.
Okay, great, thank you.
People are with us. Two little things. One, CDOT has started the traffic light project, so it should be within October, I think. Yeah, they have it in the highway.
And we don't make a boo-boo and have to redo the contract.
Oops.
Just a couple things with that highway commercial camping. We had been talking about that and bringing it forward at the time of the application for the rezone. And so that was in process as well. So they kind of move parallel. And we made that clear. This is happening, or we're proceeding with it. Are you sure you want to do this other as well?
So they chose to proceed with that.
Yeah. Thinking that one would end sooner than the other, but we also knew that the zoning wasn't gonna go into effect until August at the time of application, at the time of given all the hearing dates and the ordinance effective dates and things like that. So anyway, just a little other history. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, great.
Try to go. Thank you all for doing that. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah.
Good stuff for that.
Yeah, okay, I'll take a motion.
Move to adjourn. A second.
We got Rice and Rowe.
So it is you too.
All in favor?
All
right.
Okay, the meeting is adjourned.
Andrew,